Give me everything tonight. For all we know, we might not get tomorrow. 'Cause baby, tonight
our lives will never be the same. Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I'm Obs. I've got everyone with me here today for a very exciting episode on a very sacred day in Polin history. First of all, before we jump back in, how is everyone doing?
Good. We were just having a conversation about the TfL, which is Transport for London, London's metropolitan multi-transport format system. We're talking about different methods, and I think I said we should revisit it. Now I've said it. I don't know what we were saying that was that interesting.
You said everything you've needed to say on TfL.
But I think that you were being mean about the DLR, which is...
No, I wasn't being mean about the DLR. I was just saying, you know...
There's no driverless trains. And it can be a bit rough and ready, particularly because the gates are normally, like, optional. Whereas all the other lines, you have to go through the ticket gate.
Yeah.
Whereas DLR ones, it's very much a honesty system.
Yeah, you pay if you so feel like paying.
For the non-Brits listening in, it was just the most British conversation ever.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, that's the overground, classic overground.
Well, it is the classic overground, isn't it? I'm more of a Lizzie line these days.
Yeah, see what I mean?
Which feels very bourgeoisie, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you know what Cher's favourite tube line is?
Cher's?
Yeah, Cher, the singer.
I'm ready for it.
The Jubilee.
Oh, that's cute.
You know what? I am such a Jubilee girl.
How much of this will we leave in?
Anyway.
Well, transport, you know.
Now onto a different mode of transport, yeah.
Carriages, yeah.
There was a theme.
Regency TfL, etc., etc. Yes. But anyway, we will get to the carriage in a minute. Veg, Lecky, Beans, what's going on? Lecky, you nearly died this week, so...
I had one of the worst migraines I've ever had in my life, going into 3 days before it finally disappeared. So that wasn't very fun.
But share your top tip with the audience.
Oh, Benadryl.
For fellow migraine sufferers.
Drugs.
Benadryl finally took away my migraine. I tried everything. I was like cocktailing, Tylenol and ibuprofen and...
Just stopping at cocktailing. I was like, that probably won't help, actually.
No, and caffeine. And I literally just like laid in my room with like an eye mask on all day and just suffered for 48 plus hours. So highly recommend it. But don't take a lot of it because apparently Benadryl can cause dementia. So
oh my God.
Wow.
Win some, lose some.
To the listener, this is not medical advice. We do not recommend this approach. Please consult your pharmacist before taking anything beyond the recommended dose and before mixing medications.
We've done a disclaimer.
Speak to your pharmacist, guys.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Not sponsored by Benadryl. I don't think they'd like me saying that their drug causes dementia, though. So,
Veg, what's going on in your little veg patch?
Nothing much. Oh, I graduated from the masters.
congratulations.
Yeah, amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I am the master.
Beanlet, how are you doing?
I also had a huge migraine
Oh, no.
that I went to a walk-in clinic for. And then I just went to the bathroom before we recorded and I started my period. So I'm assuming those two are connected.
Oh,
Of course. There we go.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you pooped out the migraine. I was like, yeah, that's a better hack than taking dementia drugs.
The Americans are finally climbing back to the world of the living, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, Obs, you went on a holiday for your birthday.
I did.
How did that go?
Vacation.
It was my birthday and I just wanted to be alone. So I went to, and this is one of those moments on the podcast where it just sounds like I'm copying Colin. That's
Yes.
not what it
Yeah, right.
I always have to do a disclaimer. Like,
I'm not Colin.
Yeah, I'm not Colin. I went to Cyprus. It was the only place in Europe that didn't have a flood, rain, or wind. So
Yeah.
that's where your girl ended up.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was very nice. I had a cute little apartment.
Speaking of your apartment, there was a painting of what?
Oh my God, right. So I get to Cyprus,
Uh-huh.
nowhere near London. I rock up, and what is in the apartment but a massive, tapestry. It was made of plastic, but a plastic tapestry of a carriage. And I sent a picture of it to you guys, and I was like, what the hell is this doing here? I hadn't seen it on the listings. I couldn't tell if it was serendipity or a threat. But that's where I ended up, and yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Wonderful.
But yeah, well, congratulations, everyone.
Oh, wait, before we go,
Yeah.
I hosted a book club. It was really fun.
Aw.
And then I am the person who's picking the books for May.
Aw.
And rather than going like sad books about mothers and daughters, because May is Mother's Day in America,
Mhm.
I decided instead to look up what like is happening in the month of May. And apparently May is Lettuce Appreciation Month.
I love this.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I couldn't really find any books about lettuce, but it's also Zombie Awareness Month. So I went with that one because there's
Lettuce and zombies.
Yeah, so there's more like books about zombies than there is about lettuce.
Shocking, really. Who would have thought, babe?
That sounds like a great choice, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm just going to go on to Waterstones. I'm just going to type in lettuce. Let us see what happens, shall we?
Let us be friends.
Yeah.
Let us be grateful.
Okay, there's a cracking book by Helen Lance called Lettuce, Grow Your Own Lettuce.
Okay.
I'm not seeing many. Well, what a shame, actually. Lettuce head,
There we go.
lettuces and cream. I think that's enough. Tomato lettuce and wriggly worms. Alluring lettuces. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Well, congratulations on book club, and to any writers out there, fill the gap, please.
Yeah. We need more lettuce content.
Yeah, I tried to find, maybe like a bizarre erotica about lettuce
Oh,
and
God.
nothing.
What a shame.
I'm surprised there isn't one because there's something out there for everybody, but yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd been on AO3,
Yeah, let's not kink shame.
I'm sure you'd have different stories to tell.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you follow the romance book subreddit, I think there's like even like books about donuts that come
Yeah.
to life and stuff like that. So I'm surprised there isn't a lettuce option.
I put my penis in a donut hole.
That's about the gist of it, I think.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, we're actually out with the lettuce man and in with the meat eater, Colin. As I was saying at the beginning of the episode, it's a very special day, probably, if we've managed to edit in time. We're hopefully releasing this on the anniversary of the carriage scene from Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. So April 20th, 2025 marks exactly 201 years since the events of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. If you were listening to us last year, we actually did quite a stressful reread of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton that was released in time to perfectly match the dates because it was the 200th anniversary. So we read it and released it on those days, which obviously fell within deep promo territory. So we were trying to do
Yes.
trying to do all of them at once.
Yeah.
So this time last year, we released an episode covering the carriage scene from the book. And this year, we're releasing an episode about the carriage scene from the show, which was entirely unintentional because we absolutely didn't mean to split this into 3. Please don't hate us for doing so.
I think we thought we'd be done with the rewatch by now. Anyway.
Yeah.
Alas, here we are, guys. But before we dive into the carriage, let's go over the breaking crumbs. What have you got for us, Lecky?
Bridgerton Netflix celebrated Penelope's birthday by releasing a new behind-the-scenes still of Penelope at the Modiste from episode 306, and they also joined in the Polin Day fun by sharing a behind-the-scenes video of Polin dancing. However, none of the clips contained a shot of Colin signing Pen's dance card, but it was cute nonetheless.
You know why it didn't have it in the footage? Because he's never done it. So take it up directly with the man himself.
On that same subject, I have to mention that I was wrong about something we mentioned last episode.
What a retraction.
Yeah.
Live in the flesh.
A little script moment that I shared where I said that Pen falters. No one has ever asked this outright. I thought that was from the scene where he signs her dance card, but I must have misread my notes. It's from a little later at the ball when Debling is questioning Penelope about her feelings for Colin. But I will say, I do think it still works there if they had included it.
Lecky has been fired. This is the last time you'll be hearing from Lecky.
Sorry.
I kind of feel like it's more interesting that the line is actually from the Debling confrontation.
That no one's asked her that outright.
Yeah, because what he's saying, if you confuse listeners, apologies, that script note
Scene description.
is after Debling challenges about her feelings for Colin, and then it's that she's never been challenged, and she falters. And it is interesting because the only person who ever has really mentioned it before is Marina.
Yeah.
But in this moment, she absolutely has nothing to say against it, which is so revealing inherently.
Yes. I do still think it would work in the dance card scene, but it wasn't there. Sorry.
Maybe if Colin had just asked her outright, "Are you Lady Whistledown?" she would have faltered and we would have been able to,
Yeah.
direct confrontation, clearly not the way with Pen.
Anyway, my notes got a little bit scrambled.
Yes, as I say, she's been reprimanded thoroughly. But the reason Lecky has audited her notes is because Lecky recently took a bit of a trip back to the library. But we'll get to that in a bit. a little teaser for you to stick around.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of mix-ups, Luke Newton also posted a blooper video in celebration of Polin Day in which he's seen fumbling his lines during Polin's wedding.
And this caused chaos because no one could hear what he was saying.
Yeah. I tried to isolate it.
I thought he said your wedded wife.
Yeah, some people think that he said your wedded wife, but to me it almost sounds like he says his lines as they were supposed to be on the page, but maybe confuses himself and then kind of questions himself.
Yeah, I think he said it fine and completely psyched himself out.
Yeah, that's what I think happened too. But of course, there's lots of debates. In a recent interview, Simone shared that she would soon be back on the set of Bridgerton, which means we can expect more Kate in the final 2 episodes of the season.
Perhaps for a wedding.
Perhaps for a wedding. Nicola also shared a photo from set in which we saw the teensiest glimpse of a Penelope curl, which was very exciting for us.
Just a little boop-a-doop.
However, on a very important note, this week both Nicola Coughlan and Charithra Chandran have used their platforms to speak out about the devastating ruling in the UK, which has deeply impacted the trans community. Nicola created a fundraiser for Not a Phase, the same charity she was wearing a t-shirt for on set, and we will be sharing both links for the t-shirt and Nicola's fundraiser in our show notes.
And just to say, we are sending love, as always, to all our LGBTQIA listeners, no matter where you are in the world. We love you.
To turn to season 4 crumbs, production was spotted filming back at Loseley Park, the location of my cottage and likely the infamous lake scene. Combined with where they are in the filming process and the fact a musician from season 3 was on set, this has led fans to speculate that they may have shot a wedding there.
So Ollie Higginson might have been on set, which got me thinking all sorts of things, because how cool would it be then? Obviously, my cottage is sort of a space away from the ton and society anyway. So it's this sort of liminal space where the class boundaries have blurred. And obviously, the Benedict-Sophie union will be a blurring of boundaries. But how lovely would it be if the guests were a complete mix of society and all of the maids and the servants and the footmen?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
That would be really fun. Ollie's there throwing flowers down the aisle.
Yeah, because Masali was also potentially spotted on set. So both John and Michaela could have been present at the wedding.
And by John, you mean Footman John?
I do mean Footman John, because John is not long for this world.
Lecky, it's not looking good for John Sterling.
Yeah.
He might be at the church. He might be in the garden, buried.
Oh.
Great that there's another John on standby.
But I do think this is really cool, as you said, because it kind of shows that they've united the upstairs and downstairs in a way, bridging the boundary that initially kept them apart. In other Bridgerton news, Bridgerton is on the shortlist for the Sustainable Production Award at the 2025 Global Production Awards. This comes as no surprise to Polin fans, who have long celebrated the series' sustainable king and queen, Colin Bridgerton and Penelope Featherington.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. I can't do that louder. It's 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But I would be saying it with gusto.
We also previously mentioned that Tudum was on the horizon, but a clarification regarding the date, this year's Tudum will take place on May 31st, which is a Saturday in Los Angeles.
We're not doing well, Lecky. We're having to print a lot of retractions.
Retractions left and right.
In my defence, we said it was the 1st of June because when I Googled it, it came up in my time zone.
Oh.
So if you're in any other time zone, it is June the 1st, actually.
Yeah.
For the most of the world, carry on. But for you in LA, it will be the Saturday, which means it'll be a late night for me. And can you believe I never work on Sundays? Sunday, the 1st of June is the only day I'm working this year on a Sunday.
Sad.
So I'm going to have to stay up late with you
Oh dear.
and go to work. Not ideal.
Apologies.
Yeah, thank you for the apology there, Lecky. I hold you personally responsible.
And Cantony fans, if you haven't heard by now, you will all be delighted to know that Netflix have released a new Cantony shirt, now available in their shop. I actually recently bought a Lady Whistledown t-shirt for myself as a sleep shirt, so they actually have some kind of good stuff now. I saw they had like a Lady Whistledown mouse pad that I kind of want. They had some cute stuff. Oh, cute.
And talking of merch, it was my birthday, as we said in the crumbs. It's actually ages ago now, but, you know, whatever. And Lecky and the others got me so many presents, but one of them that arrived, all the way from America, bit of ASMR, are the measuring spoon set from, is it Walmart?
It's Walmart, yeah.
Because Walmart did a collab with Bridgerton ages ago. And I think when we were looking at the video, I was like, the only thing I'd want is the spoons. And you sent me them.
Yeah.
Very cute.
In other cast news, Bert Seymour will star in the original series Suspect, the shooting of Jean-Charles de Menendez, airing on Disney Plus on April 30th. Everyone's favorite footman Ollie Higginson has also been nominated for the Ian Charleson Award for his role in Othello.
Well done.
And very exciting news for period drama fans, Rosa Hesmondhalgh has just been cast as Elizabeth Bennet in Kate Hamill's stage adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. If you're a fan of Ben Fensom's series on social media where he lip syncs along with the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, which which is fantastic. Highly recommend it. We'll probably link it in our show notes. He has also been cast as both Mr. Wickham and Mr. Collins.
Get you a man who can do both. My God.
I know. 2 great roles.
I think it's touring in different locations as well.
I would love to see that, to be honest. And then, yeah, I left out the bit about the asparagus fern.
I do want to mention the asparagus fern, actually.
I did like the thing about they said it was trying to find the light.
Hang on, we need to explain what we're talking about.
Okay.
So this is not a crumb, but I thought it was the crumb of all crumbs.
Right.
I was just innocently strolling Reddit, nowhere near a Bridgerton subreddit, and I just found the plant sub, I don't know what it's called.
Community.
The plant community popped up. I fear I've been there too much because of Sir Philip. But anyway, they had a whole post on asparagus ferns, and it was this massive asparagus fern that had grown. It'd like taken over an entire room, and there was all kinds of discussion about asparagus ferns. And I thought it was hilarious because they were all talking about how it's not a fern.
Yeah. But my favorite comment was, it basically was like crawling all over the walls, and someone said it was trying to find the light. And I was like, the symbolism for Polin.
So if you want some more asparagus fern lore, we'll send you there.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it for like crumbs. However, if you've stuck around to listen this far, and we know not all of you do, so if you are still with us and you haven't just skipped to the carriage, then we have a little treat for you because we sent Lecky back to the library. Lecky, what library was it? Just in case people don't know. It's a Home from Home.
The Writers Guild Foundation Shavelson Web Library in Los Angeles, where they have a bunch of scripts, including Bridgerton.
So we have done episodes on it before. These are where we get all of our little script tidbits that we're including in these rewatches.
Mm-hmm.
So Lecky went back.
Take more notes.
Yeah, because you went a few times. Also, you have to take it all by hand, really. So it's very, very time consuming. And when you originally went, you had to look at every single script for the entire show.
Right. So I was looking for the big changes mostly.
But now because we're heading into our part 2 rewatch, we thought we'd send you back so that you could do a deep dive on the later episodes and try and scoop up everything so we're ready for our rewatches in the next few months.
But I also took another look at the part 1 episodes to see if there was anything I had missed.
Because we were a bit scrambly the first time, hence why we had a retraction at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
We will be doing a little mini episode in the next few weeks, covering a few more of those little script moments in a bit more detail. However, today we will tease you with a couple of very pertinent moments from earlier on in episode 4. So these are moments that we didn't include in our previous rewatches, but feel you absolutely must know as a matter of urgency, aka I think they're interesting. I don't know if anyone else does. They are interesting. Considering that this episode is titled What a Feeling That Is Like Torture, I am especially pleased to announce that Lecky has solved a mystery that has been torturing me since part 1 initially aired. When I saw this in Lecky's notes, I sort of screamed.
She was so excited.
Lecky hadn't realised the significance.
No.
I was like, we need to do an emergency episode this second. We did not, because I think nobody else but me cares. Overwhelmingly. Yeah. But we have solved the mystery of Debling's rank. I am thrilled. You know, I kept saying this is one of the only things I'd want to know.
I know, like number 2 glaring question for Sam Phillips.
And I thought we'd never find out.
Number 2 pressing question.
Lecky, let us know how you found that.
Okay, so there was some cut dialogue, speaking of plants, in the scene when Debling calls in Penelope and offers her a plant. Mm-hmm. So before her mother and sisters barge in, they're debating how Penn managed to snare Debling, and Portia says, "We know what she did. She used Colin Bridgerton's help. Many people would do much worse to be connected to the Bridgertons."
Which is still in the show, but then
she added, "No matter the means, we would be fortunate indeed to be connected to an earl."
He's an earl.
So he's an earl, yeah.
He's an earl. I was on the floor about this.
Flabbergasted. Because what does this mean for Penelope?
Well, now this is a sick cosmic joke, isn't it? Well, I suppose it's also called writing. But
yeah.
Now, had Penn married an earl, she would therefore become a countess. Right? Mm-hmm. So she would have been Countess Debling.
Yeah.
Do you know what a countess is in Italian?
Yeah.
A contessa. Yeah, Penn would have become a contessa. Can you imagine Colin's little brain trying to process that?
Oh.
So in the rankings, it goes from top to bottom. So obviously you have like the monarchs. Then you have...
Duke?
Duke, thank you. In my head, I was like, Simon. What the fuck was Simon? You have a duke, so Simon, and his duchess. Then you have a marquis, Marquis Samadani. And then you have the earldom, Debling, evidently. And then you have the viscounts and the viscountesses.
Yeah.
And then you have the barons. So girls going up in the world.
I mean, Colin shouldn't be so surprised. He was trying to hook her up with Basilio, who's a viscount.
I know, but he should have been aiming for an earl, evidently.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a thrill. I am absolutely delighted that this mystery's been solved. And I also recognise that nobody else will care but me. Now, a topic that people will care very passionately about, actually, Lecky.
Apologies in advance. We debated whether or not to share this, and Obs kind of didn't, but I think it's hilarious.
I know. I was like, poor Colin. I was like, I don't want to include this.
And I'm saying this as a Colin fan. So anyway, just keep that in mind. For fans of the Lord Squad.
Yeah. Less and less by the day, I tell you now.
There was a cut exchange between Lord Wilding and Colin in the Fuller Library where Lord Wilding implied that Colin has a small penis.
Absolute slander.
So after Lord Stanton says, I aided you with that balloon, and yet all the fan fluttering seems to be markedly in your direction, Lord Wilding originally added, give Mr. Bridgerton his due. It could not have been easy to anchor such a massive weight with such minimal counterbalance between his legs.
Poor Colin.
To which Colin simply smiles, amused, and then he added, and yet still you are envious.
So this is good because to me, I'm like, he's clearly got no ego about it. So it's not true.
Yeah.
However, can you imagine? And I can see why they took it out, right? Because what a weird tonal shift. Because the way it's actually played in the Fuller Library is Colin is like down bad, heartbroken, looking at Pen and Debling in the middle, like devastation.
And you have a small member.
And it's like, give a man a break. And then also Colin would have to be like laughing it off. And there you go, guys. That's not going to be a poll because I think we all know the true answer. But Lord Wilding.
Joe Barnes, we love you. Lord Wilding, not so much.
You go down further in my estimations every single day. And yet still I love you. So what does that say about my judgment in men? And then very, very lastly, before we let you get back to the carriage, we do have some important pod news, don't we, Lek?
Do we?
Yes, we do.
What news is that?
We do. After almost 2 years, I can't believe the time's finally come to announce that the four of us finally sat down together and watched Strictly Ballroom.
Oh, we did. We did watch Strictly Ballroom. Yeah.
We have talked about this for literally the whole time.
It was really good. I loved it.
We've watched it. We enjoyed it. We had a great time.
Highly recommend. Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Beans. Thank you to Strictly Ballroom. It was a Baz Luhrmann movie, which we didn't realise.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But after watching it, like, you could totally tell.
Yeah, so that was very exciting. Also, are you going to go see Pride and Prejudice? It's out this weekend.
This weekend or next weekend?
I think it's like over a few dates.
Well, we're just getting this episode out, so I might actually have some free time. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I kind of want to.
My husband would go with me. He loves movies like that. He went to see The Emma with me a couple years ago. He's great at that.
I feel like I can't miss the opportunity. It's not actually its anniversary now, you know. It's in September.
Whose anniversary?
Pride and Prejudice's.
Oh, okay. So why are they doing this now?
I don't know. But nevertheless, we'll participate. Yeah, it came out in like September, October.
You know what? That rings a bell.
Maybe it's like a springtime thing, you know?
Yeah.
A happy-ish anniversary. Pride and Prejudice, we love you.
Go see the stage adaptation.
There is your bumper episode of Crumbs. However, what you're really here for, the main attraction, is a certain carriage scene. So, happy anniversary carriage scene. We love you. Enjoy the episode.
Roll on.
Get up.
Yeah.
Or just wait. In this episode, we'll be picking up where we left off, getting into the carriage, and hopefully, finally, finishing up Season 3, Part 1. It's time to take the long way home. So, where did we leave off last time? We left our poor Penelope still reeling from being ditched by Debbers. And just as she's trying to process everything, Portia comes up and immediately has a go at her. What have you done? She admonishes, and a very distressed Pen confronts her mother by challenging, that is your question, not am I well? Do I only matter to you if I have a Lord's engagement ring on my finger?
Yeah. Woo-woo.
I love this moment. What a great one to start off. I mean, not for poor Pen. She's taking a battering. But I love this because it's such a genuine emotional turning point in Portia and Pen's relationship.
Yeah.
It actually really sticks with Portia and makes her think. And I know that we have that sort of regression when she finds out about the engagement next episode, but this is the turning point for them both. And you can see that in the way that when Pen storms away, Portia doesn't react to what Prudence is saying. Her attention is lingering with her youngest. And I just think this little moment is played really well by Polly and Nicola. And I think you can really see that for Pen, it really is crumbling around her. But Beans, you're such a Portia fan. What do you make of this little moment between the two?
Well, everything happens fast in Bridgerton, so rather than breaking down something that would take maybe over a year, I think, to kind of figure out, Portia just seemingly discovers that Pen has feelings overnight.
The fact that she has a youngest daughter is probably a shock to her system.
You know, that she's a person who's like living and breathing and has emotional connections with people.
Has more therapy sessions than they can afford.
Yeah, but you know, we can't do a show that's a year long about Portia's just mental health and discovering that her kid is indeed a child. But I think it's a great moment for Portia. For me, it was self-reflection, but it was also shock. There's been moments where Portia's been shocked by Penelope before, but this one was more of like, you know, why is it always I am the problem? Why is it never, what is the problem? How can we solve it? How are you? And I think like that's the first time that she's been confronted by Penelope that way.
That her approach is harmful in a way. And that's kind of the arc that we get, because by the time you get to episode 8, they're sitting together figuring out how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I think as we move into part 2, that's definitely one of our favourite elements of part 2, the growth in the Featherington relationship. So Portia and Pen, but also the sisters.
Yeah.
It's a real bright spot in what can be at times quite a dark few episodes, which we'll get to. But for now, Pen is not happy with her mother and she runs out to abandon ship, flee the scene, and flag down her carriage.
I just have to say, as much as like Beans loves the Regency breathing, I just love these like shots where it's so beautiful as she runs down the stairs and out past the torches.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful sequence of shots.
Yeah, the set design as she runs down is just gorgeous. And my heart really breaks for her in this moment, because I think in this episode we've seen her really scrambling, especially in the last few minutes, we've seen her scrambling to just keep hold of something, even though we know that Debling isn't good for her and that that's the best thing for them to not progress. It's just this moment of desperation where it just feels like she's lost absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know she has Colin's love. She doesn't know he's an option. And she's lost the only thing that she did have in that moment. What a shit night, babe.
Yeah.
But as the Lady Whistledown voiceover says,
it is said that the heart is forever making the head its fool.
Pen flags down that carriage.
Target locked.
And such pertinent words from her alter ego, because she couldn't hide her true feelings for Colin to Debling, and it's completely made a fool of her head, really. And that tension that she's had is kind of over, where she was trying to force herself into this life that she didn't really want because she was trying to override her heart. And that's completely crumbled now. And I love that shot of her crying outside before she gets in the carriage. Beans, do you remember you and I once recorded a whole little Crumbs episode just because there was like a 5-second clip of this moment released on like, was it on like TikTok? It came up as an advert.
Yeah.
TikTok. I think it was like Netflix Latino America.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
It was really hard to get, and we were just sat there analysing it. But yeah, beautifully played.
But don't worry, Pen. All is far from lost as Colin runs into the courtyard to try to catch Pen's carriage, not caring who can see him, which is also just so funny.
Wait.
I remember when we first saw the shot of him running past all those people just in like the promo clips. Oh my God, we couldn't believe that he was doing that.
What a thrill. And what good character growth.
I know.
Like when he was being a twat last season about being seen with her, and
Yeah, not caring what other people think.
that's what you want.
Yes, good for you, Colin. But it's probably a good job that Penn announces their engagement the next day, because Colin really did make a big spectacle at the ball. You can see the attendees of the ball watching him as he dashes out. I also just want to point out that the torches that are burning in the courtyard as Penn leaves, and as Colin later gets into her carriage, kind of bring to mind and evoke the dream sequence in 303. But this is Colin's dream becoming a reality as he finally shares and acts on his feelings. He dashes out of the frame, intent on chasing her down.
Oh, what a moment. And our lovely listener Muffman's Mama said, this is the episode where Colin's past, present and future absolutely collide. He's a dreamer, he is a romantic, his entire world hinges upon his courage to admit his feelings, and I live for it. I was so proud of him chasing after her carriage.
Yeah, same.
We were yelling at him.
Yeah.
I know that much. It's another one of those moments. It's kind of the continuation of the earlier scene where he like strides straight in. It's just another moment where we're so fully in it with him. And this is again that continuation of the action that we've been wanting for him all season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we had that as he went in to interrupt the dance, but then he lets Pen go with Debling. And there's that little bit of fear that he might just let her go again, like he did in the Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton scene and at Osterley when she got into the carriage and left without him. To be honest, Pen has spent a lot of this season fleeing into carriages.
Target locked.
I also once saw a tweet that compared him running to the Regency equivalent of like a love interest, like running through the airport at the end of like a rom-com, which I just found super hilarious.
So true, yeah.
I think it was Dressed for a Funeral, and I will share the tweet. And she also makes amazing Polin fan art, by the way.
And I hate to pull us away from Colin at literally the most critical time in the Polin love story, but we do just need to quickly cut away and check in on how the rest of the siblings are doing.
It only feels right that we get a Benedict sex scene in the middle of a big Polin moment.
Oh, perfect.
God.
And 304 does not disappoint. We see Tilly and Benedict in bed together, but in the script there was actually a little bit of dialogue which was cut out from this scene, which reveals that she's beginning to think that Benedict is as good as a pretender as she is. So Lady Tilly said, tricking people into thinking you are a respectable part of society while deep down being so utterly, and then Benedict offers disreputable. She then basically hints that she wants to keep things casual between them, and we see a flicker of doubt in Ben's face, and the scene description adds, is he certain he can keep this casual? Kind of hinting that maybe he had more feelings for Tilly originally than we kind of see in the final edit.
And we won't dwell on this too much because we will return to it later in the season, but they did play around with Benedict and Tilly in the drafting, in the final scripts, in the editing, because they kind of oscillated between whether Tilly was going to have more feelings or whether Benedict was going to have more feelings.
Yeah.
And then it sort of ends up in a almost an unexpected place where...
Yeah, it's like Lady Tilly in 308, she kind of develops feelings for Benedict. But in the original scripts, it almost seems like Benedict develops feelings for her and she tries to keep him at arm's length.
Yeah, and then they decided to sort of flip it on its head.
Yeah.
But we will get to that later because back at Bridgerton House, we find Francesca happily playing the music that John gifted to her earlier on.
Aww.
She didn't even bother to turn the lights on or candles, whatever, before she sat down to play.
They worried they'd burst into flame, like she accidentally set them on fire or something.
Violet is surprised to find her daughter at the piano, but is tentatively pleased to observe how happy John actually has made her. Perhaps Violet was wrong after all. Spoiler alert, she wasn't.
God.
But we'll get to there eventually. I remember when this was the cliffhanger, we were like, great.
I actually have a comment about this.
Go on, Leck.
Well, because I remember you said, oh, she doesn't look happy there. And I thought Violet was happy because she was smiling.
Yeah.
But upon rewatching it, you can see that that smile is fake at the end before they cut away, and
There's still something there.
heartbreaking.
Because it's so stupid. Like, I like Violet, but like at this point, this guy has obviously made her daughter happy.
Yeah.
She should be happy by her rules.
Yeah.
So does she literally just want sexual chemistry between her children? Like, that's gross. That's icky.
Yeah.
She's definitely looking for the spark, because if you remember earlier
Yeah.
at the same ball, she's telling Marcus that she doesn't think that Samadani and Fran have the spark. And I feel like that look that we linger on right before the carriage scene is also hinting that she doesn't think John and Fran have the spark either, which kind of like,
Yeah.
it's almost overcomplicated, like you've kind of brought up, Veg, having that additional love interest before
Yeah.
the final love interest. But yeah, I remember being very disappointed that that Violet was not happy with the way things were progressing. So the script actually reinforces this idea, because there's even a cut line here where Violet responded to Fran by saying, so you are interested in him, to which Francesca smiled and Violet smiled back. But as Francesca returned to picking out the music, it said Violet's face falls. The end of the scene then says, off Violet, knowing the trouble the queen will inevitably cause over this new match.
I think we were still kind of hopeful at this point because it kind of looked like they were going down the route of, oh, Violet just has this idea of what love looks like.
Yeah.
And
This is a quiet love.
yeah, it's a quiet love. It's an intimate love that's based on sort of peace.
Yeah, instead of fireworks.
It's just different.
Yeah.
But obviously the way that actually works out is slightly different, which again,
Yeah.
we'll get to. But back to Lady Whistledown, who continues.
And when one chooses the heart over the head, often all reason goes out of the window. But the body has a way, indeed, of knowing most what it needs. And this author is...
The diddly parts in action.
And this author is not one to deny the age-old wisdom of a beating a beating heart.
Well, let's go check on those beating Polin hearts, shall we?
Penelope is sadly trundling along inside her carriage, beautifully lit by torchlight, lost in thought. This actually wasn't in the script, but I absolutely love Colin's tiny muffled, wait, from outside the carriage.
Wait.
As a horse neighs, very on brand for season 3 Polin moments, and the carriage pulls to a stop. Penelope jumps up. Suddenly, the carriage door is pulled open to reveal
Colin!
Colin has just chased down her carriage for, I actually don't know how far it is, you know. Maybe we can sit down and like look at the set and figure out how far he's actually run.
It's about the length of a football field.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's quite far because...
I remember finding a map of it at one point and like tracing it.
Okay, so the exterior of Hampton Court Palace, if you remember, there's the red carpet, right? Lined by torches.
Yeah.
And then the next shot, when you see the exterior of him getting into the carriage, there's another line of torches, but it's on a road and it doesn't look like the exterior of the palace anymore. So I'll say he ran a little ways, enough to be out of breath enough to only mutter a tiny, wait.
I know, but I would run about 2 meters and be like... So, as you say, he is a bit out of breath, and Pen is not thrilled to see him. She's probably had quite enough of him tonight, and to be fair, most of what happened is Colin's fault, so fair enough. And so she tells him, I do not wish to speak with you. One of our listeners has a very important question about this moment. It's actually in your camp, Veg, so why don't you take it away?
So our listener Sasha has been doing some Lady Whistledown-esque investigation in tracking the cravat and the freedom of Colin's neck, of course. And she's pointed out that when he runs out of the ball afterwards and missed her carriage, his cravat is fully on. But when he stops the carriage, the neck has been freed. But did he take it off while running? Is it stuffed in his pocket somewhere during this whole scene?
Yeah.
What do you think? Because that's definitely what happened. He took it off.
He definitely tore it off in frustration as he was running.
Yeah.
Could we see the shot of that, Bridgerton, please?
Yeah, come on. The cravat has been on all this time.
If you're going to release the 303 dream sequence, like extended dream sequence, and the shot of him tearing off his cravat as he's running off after the carriage, please, would be much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
I mean, one of my favorite scenes from the newest Emma adaptation is when
Yeah.
Yes.
What's-His-Face takes off his cravat, like, in frustration.
Nightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nightly.
Which we kind of saw earlier in the episode when he got home depressed. But we want to see a man like so overcome with running after his love that he's like
rip it off.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah. Angst.
Yeah.
And like that is the last representation of him like being constrained by society and being like a gentleman. And
Oh, yeah.
Kind of. He does put it back on, but we move.
he does. But do you think maybe he used that to wipe his fingers on afterwards? Anyway, do you think that he ripped it off,
2 fingers.
like carried off in the wind? Or do you think he put it in his pocket?
I think it's in the wind.
I think he's a dramatic person, so he would have just ripped it off.
Yeah.
He's got other ones.
I kind of think he is kind of the combination of the dramatic, but also like the very sweet. So he's the kind of person to like dramatically rip something off.
Yeah.
And then catch it out of the air and then pocket it.
And neatly fold it back.
Like throw it up into the air, catch it, and then pocket it.
Ooh.
Years ago, before I was even at uni, we had these massive student protests in the UK about tuition fees. And as part of that, like there was these massive protests and we stormed this university campus and we like went up this massive staircase and we pulled all these leaflets out and we were like throwing them in the air because we were protesting and everything. It was very dramatic. And then once we'd done that, everyone was like, everyone now let's pick everything up. So we spent like an hour like meticulously picking up these little pieces of paper and like folding them back and putting them neatly on their little folders again.
Wow.
I feel like he's that kind of dramatic.
That is not the American way. We would just dump it and go.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like to think that he still got hold of it, or maybe it's just tangled in the wind.
Him, like, stuffing his cravat into his pocket while running is quite the image. I just think he threw it.
Yeah.
That's why I want it.
He just ripped it and threw it and went, it's gone.
Yeah, it's good.
He's rich.
Yeah.
No matter what, he threw it because he's dramatic.
Yeah.
And he's rich, so
Yeah.
he wouldn't necessarily be mourning its loss.
He's just like shoving it in while he's running, so he like isn't as fast because he's not using his arms to push him forward.
Most awkward run ever.
Yeah.
I'd love it if we like think that the run was really sweeping and romantic and gorgeous, and actually he's like tripping up.
Yeah.
He's stumbling. He's like
he stumbles over like a little hedge or something.
Aw.
just appears with twigs in his hair.
Yeah.
Pen might not want to talk to Colin right now, but he is insistent. After all, it's not just talking they're about to get up to. Colin says, let me in, which I think is really sweet, actually, that he waits for her to acquiesce rather than just jumping in without her consent.
Oh.
And consent is a theme that we will come back to many a times in this scene.
Colin the vampire.
Yeah. That's so funny because me and Lecky just watched What We Do in the Shadows, wasn't it?
Oh, nice. I like that one.
I had a great time with it.
Yeah.
I love that show.
Different Colin.
But then Colin jumps in and finally, we have Penelope and Colin sitting in a carriage. Thank the Lord it only took 3 seasons, 5 years, however long it's been. They've just got a hand up.
Pen and Colin sitting in a tree. Fingering.
Beautiful, babe. Thank you. That's my episode description written, isn't it?
Bingo, bring the puss.
And so here begins
You're welcome.
the ride of a lifetime, the infamous carriage scene. Book fans, you know this is the scene that we were all desperate to see included in season 3. It was a pivotal moment in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, and by far one of the best known book moments from the whole book series. Happy anniversary carriage scene. We love you. And we actually did, as I said earlier, a very detailed breakdown of the book version of the carriage scene back during our Rereading Mr. Bridgerton episodes last year. So if you want to go listen to our very in-depth thoughts on the book scene, go listen there. We already talked about it. Beans, I can't remember if you loved it or not, but I'm sure you had a great time.
The book reread?
I think she liked the bodice ripping aspect of it.
Oh,
a
yeah.
bit.
Nice.
Yes, because I talked about
Titty pop out dress.
titty
That's what it
pop
was.
out
Yeah.
dress. Yes.
We'll get to the titty pop out.
She has a cameo here.
Yeah.
And so go listen to that episode along with many, many, many of our incorrect guesses about how the carriage scene would play out in the show. Because as we all know, there are a lot of similarities between the book version and the show version. But I think a lot specifically around context and tone were very different between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if you've read the books, you'll know that the way the carriage scene sits in the book is that this is the pivotal moment where Colin finds out about Lady Whistledown. So they're at the church together and he takes the paper from Pen. She runs outside, he reads it, figures out her identity and chases her out and forces her is a bit harsh. She just tells her to get up and get in the carriage though. And then the carriage ride back to Penelope's house is really tense. They argue a lot. They're arguing specifically about Whistledown and Penelope's place in society. And then, of course, it breaks into this explosive moment between the two of them.
I do prefer that reveal.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Because it's funny, isn't it? Because in the show, the carriage scene has nothing to do with Whistledown at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's instead completely focused on Colin's really vulnerable confession of love for Penelope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all would have preferred the Lady Whistledown reveal to have happened in part 1. But, you know, the show is big on drama, so they made the choice that was going to go for maximum emotional conflict.
Yeah. I remember at the time when we talked about everything that could happen in season 3, I think we were all kind of like married to the idea of the carriage scene remaining linked to the Whistledown reveal.
Yes.
We really thought that was going to happen.
And for the Lady Whistledown reveal to happen before the mirror scene.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the other thing.
Because we felt like there was something important in them being fully exposed to each other
Yeah.
Right.
in the mirror scene.
The mirror scene fits such a strange place in the narrative, but carry on, Beans.
Because initially, I think our prediction was Colin was going to chase after Penn to tell her his feelings.
I think we originally thought we had a few. I mean, we had like every variation of every scene in our heads, but
Yeah.
I think we initially thought that he was going to follow her out from a ball because
Yeah.
she'd rejected him and he couldn't figure out why she'd rejected him.
Right. Yes.
And so it's tied into his love, but him being confused about what was going on with her.
Right. And that's how it was going to happen. And for me, in terms of storytelling, I feel like that would have had more impact because the second half wouldn't have been so packed as it was.
Yeah.
And had sort of odd pacing.
Yeah.
I think we, like I said, we wanted the carriage scene to be linked to the Whistledown reveal. And in the end, the carriage scene is entirely detached from the Whistledown reveal.
Right.
I actually, we'll talk about it obviously, but I love the carriage scene and I don't mind that it's divorced from Whistledown
Yeah.
Yeah.
at all. I love that it becomes this intimate moment about Colin's feelings and its vulnerability and
Yeah.
it's joyous.
Yeah.
And I think, had you told me before that it wouldn't have had anything to do with Whistledown, I might have thought twice about it. But I love how it is portrayed in the show.
Yeah.
But I agree that the actual Whistledown reveal, which we'll get to in 306, 307, I still sort of, it didn't have to have like a carriage scene moment, but I think the way it fell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind the carriage scene being devoid of Whistledown, but I do have some slight issues about how the Whistledown reveal was done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with you that I really love the way they adapted the carriage scene.
Me too.
I didn't think they were going to do it in this manner, but like you said, the joy in that moment,
Yeah.
it's like sexy but sweet at the
Yeah.
same time. time. It's just perfect.
There's a reason why everyone rewatches.
Yeah, I think it was important for Colin to shine in this scene with it being separated from Whistledown.
Yeah.
And then, as we were alluding to, another big change from the book to show is the change of location from the church to the ball. I think this is something that we did predict and would come to pass. We all kind of knew that the church wasn't going to work. It's just not how Whistledown worked in the show.
Yeah.
And we did always have this idea, as I said, that Colin would follow Pen out of a ball, which is what happens in 306. And that is then linked to the Whistledown reveal. But it is very differently done, like they're engaged, which we never would have predicted that he'd find out after they were engaged and everything like that.
Yeah.
As well, there is a big difference in the tone between the carriage scene in the book and the show. So if you remember in the book, Colin is really angry. And he's kind of aggressive with her, whereas show Colin is coming from an entirely different perspective. As I say, this is about Colin's vulnerable love confession and Penelope partially reciprocating.
Yeah.
We also spent a lot of time debating whose carriage they would use.
Very important topic.
In Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, it is Colin's carriage. And if I recall correctly, I think we all thought it would most likely be Colin's blue carriage.
Yeah.
As we know in the show, it's actually Penelope's carriage they get into, which leads to a reversal of some book lines later, which we will get to. But Colin's been ready to move into the Featherington house pretty much from day one, so I guess it's not super surprising he tried to use the Featherington family carriage to commute home with Pen.
Cute.
Yeah, he's like, this is my ride home too, babe. Yeah, let's go. I think although the context is very different and Colin's approach is very different, partially what remains is Pen's perspective, because although in the book Colin isn't confessing his love to Penelope in the same way that show Colin is doing in this moment, I think that both versions of Pen share this intrinsic belief that this moment with Colin isn't permanent. And it reminds me of what book Pen says. She thinks this might never happen again. She might never again feel the exquisite weight of him pressing against her or the scandalous tickle of his tongue against hers. She had one chance to make a memory that would have to last a lifetime, one chance to reach for bliss. And we will touch on this a little bit later, what show Penelope actually thinks is going to happen from this moment on, or maybe won't happen.
There's a quote where Nicola basically says that Pen is thinking the equivalent of what you just said here.
And I think that's such an interesting way to look at Penelope's vulnerability in the scene, because we talk a lot about Colin's vulnerability, but for Pen, she thinks this is kind of all they're going to have, and she still allows herself to sort of fully trust him in the process and go with it. But you can't deny that that quote matches the lyrics of Give Me Everything to a T. I remember when we found out that that song was going to be in it, I was like, surely not. That cannot be the song for the carriage. And then I listened to it, I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is literally her thought process in the book. But again, we will get to that as well. Did we know that the carriage scene was going to make it into season 3? Well, thanks to Nicola Coughlan, we absolutely did. There was that infamous little hint that she gave through filming at the time they were filming the carriage scene.
Yeah, so Nicola posted a story which was all black and then in the corner a tiny little carriage emoji. We freaked out.
Yep.
And although fans had long suspected the carriage would make it into the Shondaland budget, Luke Newton and Nicola Coughlan didn't know for certain until they had the scripts. Luke told the Bridgerton podcast, "We had many conversations about this scene. It felt like there was an added pressure, but in a really positive way. There was a different level of energy on set for those iconic moments from the books. I remember Nicola and I reading the script for the first time and being so glad that it made it into the show."
The carriage scene itself was filmed over about 3 days, with the carriage set being built on a soundstage. There wasn't room inside the carriage for any additional crew members, so a camera was installed inside with Luke and Nicola, with Andrew on directing from the outside. Of course, the beginning of the scene with Colin chasing Penelope was filmed on location, as well as the end of the scene, where they stop at Bridgerton House.
I think we mentioned this in the last episode, but just as a little refresher, these scenes where it's the exterior of Hampton Court Palace of the ball, these were shot later in the shoot, and that's why you could potentially notice inconsistencies in pen styling here, if there are any shots of her nails, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We have to remember this whole sequence is like at least 3 different locations. You have Hampton Court Palace for all of these moments and Colin chasing her.
Yeah, so the interior scenes were shot back in, I want to say, October,
November?
yeah. 2022.
Right.
And then these scenes that take place outdoors with Colin running and Penelope getting in the carriage, those were filmed in January 2023.
Yeah. And then you had the other side of the scene as well, where they arrive at Bridgerton House, and that would have been filmed at Ranger's house.
Yeah.
So you have a big stretch of time to kind of create and maintain this emotional intensity as well, which everyone manages to do really well. And in an interview with Shondaland, Nicola confirmed that they actually did many versions of the carriage scene, with Luke adding, "We did so many of that one scene in particular because Andrew Arn, our director, wanted us to do multiple versions. We played it so many different ways, which made it nice to watch back and see the final editing to find out which take they went with. How else do you think they could have played this scene? It's so intriguing. That's like the What Barb line, like hearing that they played like 5 different ways.
I was going to say, I need to know what are the intentions? What did they try? Questions I'd like to ask.
The thing, too, is like they could have done different actions as well. Like he could have gone down on her or something.
Yeah, because a lot of the intimacy wasn't scripted necessarily.
Yeah.
It was up to interpretation.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because the whole idea of him going under her skirt was not in the script.
Well, the fingering wasn't there.
True, yeah.
I wonder if they were playing around with how vulnerable Colin was going to be and Pen's reactions, because Pen is so sparse with what she says.
She kind of bites out the word "what" when he confesses. What?
And it really relies on Colin to say everything.
Yeah.
Or when she says, we're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways you could play with that. So please enlighten us. But are you happy with how it ended up? I mean, it's the carriage scene.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It's a bit different to how we imagined it would be and predicted it would be. But overall, Beans, what do you think?
I liked it. I mean, I liked the song choice because I thought it was hilarious. When I read that, I laughed out loud.
Yeah, sorry, same.
But I think Luke did a very good job, like, expressing his vulnerability and stuff. I loved the putting her hands in his hair. Loved the part where she did not say, "Oh, it's like Eloise."
God, yeah.
Thank fucking God.
You were so scared. When that was happening, you were like, oh my God, please don't. Because you were so creeped out in the book reread.
But she was thinking it in my head. That's the one moment that ruins it. It's such a lovely moment, but I'm like, is that what she's laughing at? Is that what she's smiling at?
Yeah, absolutely not. Your hair feels like Eloise. Okay, what the hell?
Can we pull over the carriage, please?
Yeah, imagine if he'd stopped there and been like, okay, well, I think I misjudged the situation. Sorry, Pen.
I'm gonna go fetch Lord Debling.
And Eloise.
It would so take me out of the moment if any person that I was doing it with was like, "Oh, wow, your hair like feels like your sister's or like your brother's." I'd be like, first of all,
How do you know that?
why are you touching my sibling's hair in such an intimate way? Second of all, now I have to think about that as I'm doing the deed in whatever stage of the deed I'm in.
Do you reckon there's just a scene in season 4 where Pen and Elle are hanging out together and then just...
You think it'll be the reverse? She'll be braiding Eloise's hair and be like, "Hey, your hair feels very similar to Colin's."
And if I heard someone play with my hair and then go, "Wow, your hair feels like your brother's," I'd slap that bitch in the face and I'd be like, "I do not care."
So we're not hoping for a reversal.
Well, something's going to send Elle running off to Romney Hall, so it might as well be that.
Absolutely not.
Oh gosh, Lek, how do you feel overall, on a big scale, about the carriage scene, not Pen touching Elle's hair?
I feel like the scene is just perfection. It's such a well-earned culmination of their seasons-long love story, and I just adore everything about it.
Mwah.
And it also gets props for being one of the sexiest scenes in Bridgerton, despite the fact that they don't even take off their clothing. But the way they confess their feelings, and Colin finally voices the thoughts he's been wrestling with over the last few episodes, just makes this whole thing sing. Colin's love confession is iconic, it's cinema, and I don't really know what else can be said about it, though I'm sure we'll go on at length.
Oh, babe, we have so many more pages to go in this script. Nicola Coughlan and Luke Newton were also very happy with how the scene played out, with Nicola telling Variety's Still Watching podcast. I think that scene encapsulates everything that's wonderful about Bridgerton. It's got the suspense, it's got the miscommunication, the heartfelt longing for one another, the profession of love, and then it's got the sexiness, it's got this brilliant pace.
Luke agreed, saying, "If you wanted to show someone that had never seen the show before the essence of everything that it represents, you really could just put on that one scene there. It's his romantic confession of love, but then he's insecure because he doesn't get that initial response that he expects. Then it's sexy, then it's romantic, but then they laugh, all in the space of 5 minutes. It's just so beautifully written."
It has so much of their arc together.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I'd change, including the context of the scene, as we were talking about earlier. And to be honest, it makes me so thankful to know that this was such a big scene. There was a lot riding on it, literally. And to know that we got it and there's nothing that I change, it's like so lovely.
Yeah.
And to have that sort of scene for Pen and Colin where it is right up there with the infamous, like, "I burn for you, you're the bane of my existence," that this is such a moment. So why don't we head back into the carriage?
Think, 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 think.
As you said, Ovs, Pen does let Colin into the carriage, but she is not best pleased about him being there. Hence why she tells the footmen that they're going to stop at Bridgerton House first instead of heading to Featherington House as they do in the book. I'd just like to point out that the footman can clearly make out Penelope's demand to stop at the Bridgerton House first. A request made at a pretty much normal volume. You know they heard the entire conversation and everything else that follows.
God, I'd hate that job.
We spent a lot of time figuring out who was going to have to clean up the mess, and it's the Featheringtons who's receiving that particular bill. And what does follow? Well, as Colin catches his breath and tries to catch Penelope's eye, Pen is being less than hospitable to his presence. She tersely asks, "What do you want?" To which Colin leans forward and, with no hesitation, no sign of that paralysis that was holding him back at the Innovations Ball and making him act weird in the middle of the dance floor, he asks her straight out, in a fully formed sentence, "Did Lord Debling propose?"
Pen holds back, suggesting it's none of Colin's business, but Colin is insistent. "I need to know. Did he propose?"
He says that so intensely. I need to know. Did he propose?
I know, it's so good. Did he propose? Oh.
Yeah, all of his inflections in this entire scene, they're just so good.
Because to him, it's life or death, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, the way he says it, it's like his entire world is hinging on Penelope's answer. And Pen still doesn't give him an answer and coldly remarks that it is odd. When I asked for your help in finding a husband, I did not realise that also meant you might try to deny me one as well. And one of our listeners actually mentioned this. So Sasha, again, said, in the carriage, Pen says, when I asked for your help in finding a husband, but she didn't ask. Colin suggested and insisted. Why did they write the line this way? This happens like a couple of times where Pen rewrites history.
I literally was just editing a similar comment in our last episode. So I think maybe they just forgot, or maybe Penelope has just like convinced herself that she asked Colin. I don't know.
I think I filed this away with my little folder of the epilogue timelines.
Oh, yeah.
And the other mystery of Colin's letters to Penelope being from like random parts of France that he never went to.
Just forget it.
Unless he's absolutely gaslit her.
She gaslit herself.
But Colin isn't put off by Penelope's remarks and insists that it is his business because he cares about her. It's a really great moment for Colin because although Pen is being super closed off and cold towards him, he still approaches this conversation with bravery and insistence. He has to tell her everything that has been swirling in his mind for weeks.
2 weeks, as we established last episode.
2 weeks, yeah.
For weeks. He's the way he says it. You're like, just a couple, babe. But we know, of course, that Pen is acting this way because she's deeply hurt. She's still reeling from everything that's happened that night. But it's a really interesting moment for Colin because after Penelope throws him out all summer, which we know really damaged him, she throws him out upon his return. It would be so understandable for that fear to come back to him in this moment and for him to sort of pull back from Penelope when she's being cold. But as you say, like, he approaches that scene with such momentum, real bravery, and vulnerability.
Also, just in Colin's defense, in 308, when he's talking to Cressida about his letters and the absence he felt without Penelope's letters, kind of has been in his mind for months, really. He's been thinking about her throughout his travels, basically, but he just hasn't pieced together why he's feeling that way.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. He's only been cognizant of it for a few weeks.
Right.
But yeah, like you say, actually, this weight in his mind and heart has been with him
for a while.
For months. He just hasn't been able to put words to it or to process why it's affecting him so deeply.
Until they locked lips.
But when you look at Book Colin, he also was like 2 weeks. We've got a bedded, wedded, done.
He moves on a speedy timeline.
Yeah.
But Colin has more pressing matters at hand as he opens back up his little scroll of all the reasons why Lord Alfred Debling cannot marry Miss Penelope Featherington.
I'm sure he's got some compelling reasons, Lek.
Yes, it's an incredibly extensive list comprising of the airtight reasons. A, he will leave you. B, he is too particular. C, he's just not right for you, Pen. And then presumably lots of blank lines on the lawn scroll. A+ for effort, Colin.
Bless him. It reminds me of that promo video where Luke and Nick are absolutely ripping into him for his lack of reasons.
Luke said he also really likes the declaration of love in the carriage, and one of the reasons is because it's so appropriate to Colin. He pointed out that the other romantic leads have made grand and sexy declarations like, I burn for you, whereas Colin's just like, he's just not right for you. And he and Nick kind of poke fun at the idea that Colin can't even come up with a good reason, referring to the moment when Colin says Debling is too particular. Nicholas sagely remarked, that's a shit reason. I'll try to include a little clip here because they go on poking fun at Colin by saying,
he's just not right for you.
I find that so funny. He's too particular. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a shit reason.
Yeah.
That's fine. You
I
can
love
totally
it that
marry
he
someone.
can't find a good reason.
Yeah, and he's got blonde hair.
Yeah,
And that's not what you like.
He's a vegetarian, so
So
yeah.
stop him. Oh, and it is hilarious when you compare Colin's declaration to those that came before him in earlier seasons. Daphne's, I burned for you. Nice 4 words that fit onto little candles and things. Or that Anthony's is like the strap line of you are the bane of my existence, the object of all my desires. And then to fit Colin's, it's like this massive paragraph.
Yeah, it's a wall of text. You know what? I identify with this because, you know what? He's a writer. I'm also very wordy. You know what I mean? He needs a lot of words to convey what he's feeling.
He would have split this episode into 4 rewatches, yeah.
We are concise in comparison.
Also, I'm a Pisces. I want you to tell me a million ways over how much you love me, you know?
And he is a Pisces.
Oh,
He tried his best.
Yeah.
But I love that, again, it's the delivery of the lines. He will leave you. He is.
Not right for you, Pen.
yeah.
So what do we make of his incredible reasons? A, he will leave you. Mr. Colin Bridgerton, traveller extraordinaire.
Yeah.
But it's sweet because they had this conversation when they were dancing as well. Like, he can't fathom, because now he knows he wants to stick to her like glue. And he just can't fathom a world in which someone would choose to leave her and be without her.
I also think he's too scared to say you don't love him still, because he doesn't know how she feels towards him still.
Yeah.
And really what he wants to say is you don't love him, but maybe you love me.
What about he's too particular? I mean, the damn vegetarians.
Yeah, is that what it is? Because otherwise, he wasn't that particular, really. He wanted someone who had their own life and was fine with being left to get on with things. I have to criticise Colin there, but I get that he probably doesn't know that. He knows the vegetarian thing. So I think he's just being mean about vegetarians.
I was going to say, I think like the only things he knows about Lord Debling is what Wilding and Stanton told him at the balloon fair. Because he's never actually spoken to Debling. He doesn't really know what's so particular about him. But yeah.
And that's what's so great. Like, it's that brilliant thing of he just has to hate him.
Yeah.
But actually, and this is something that Luke's talked about, and it's why it was important that Debling was actually like a good contender, not a serious contender in the story, but in sort of the world, because it needed to be someone who was serious enough that it wouldn't be like, well, of course you wouldn't get with that guy. He's an absolute waste of time. And for Colin to have to sort of stand there, if there was a major red flag that Colin could be like, obviously you can't be with him because of X, Y, Z, then it make it easier for Colin and make it less vulnerable for him to be like, actually, the reality is that I just want to be with you. But it's the way that he like is scrambling for purchase on any of these ridiculous tiny details because he's just so desperate to be with her. And the thing is, ultimately, the conclusion he comes to is he's just not right for you, Pen, which encompasses so much. It's just the idea that I am your best friend and I have stood there with you for 2 seasons and years before that.
I know you.
I stood with you last year and you told me what you wanted for your life. And I know that this isn't it.
Oh.
Well, Penn puts Colin out of his misery by telling him that Debbers didn't propose. In fact, he rejected me because of you, because the scene you caused led him to believe you had feelings for me. Colin, I have to say, when Penn says that, does not look remorseful in the slightest. But Penn continues that the idea of Colin having feelings for Penn is so preposterous, I do not know what to do besides laugh. So, can Colin please roll up his little Debling hating scroll, presumably co-written by you, Veg, and shut up so they can ride home in silence and leave Penn alone?
He cannot.
Is Colin capable of shutting up and leaving her alone, Lek?
He is not. After Penn says, please, the script says, Colin breathes heavily, his head swimming, his eyes falling once more down to those lips he's been eyeing all week.
7 days.
And then the words come tumbling out before he can stop them. I cannot, because what if I did have feelings for you?
The way he's tilted down, but he sort of looks up at her through his eyelashes and just blurts out, what if I did have feelings for you?
Yeah.
The way it's shot, lit, delivered, I love it so much because they really play with their height difference in the scene. Because, I mean, sitting in a carriage is kind of an equalising concept.
Mm-hmm.
They're both at eye level, but they still manage to play with who holds the power in the scene.
The power dynamics Yeah, in a really interesting way.
Yeah, and it falls with Pen, especially a moment like this where he's saying everything. She can literally make or break his entire life for him.
Love that for her.
Yeah, go babe. And as we say, for the first time pretty much, it's only ever happened a couple of times in their relationship, Colin is angled below Pen. He is supplicating, which Andrew Arn said was entirely deliberate, especially when he literally kneels down in front of her in a moment.
In an interview with Variety, Jess Brownell talked about this decision. She said that they'd originally imagined the carriage scene as Pen and Colin sitting side by side, so they were having this intimate conversation. But Andrew Ahn had the idea of staging them across from each other, partly because it's easier to film in a carriage on a stage, but also so that when Colin wants to get closer to express himself to Penelope, he's required to get down on his knees. Jess also added that it was a nice visual for Colin, who hadn't seen Pen romantically for the past 2 seasons, to end up begging on his knees for her. But what I really like about this blocking is that Pen and Colin begin the scene with a visual gulf between them. Pen is physically and emotionally holding herself back from Colin, which means he has to reach out across the divide and bring her back into their shared world. I think this is also represented in the lighting they use in this scene, with Colin bathed in warm light, his love no longer concealed or hiding in the shadows. Meanwhile, Pen begins the scene in a colder light, more deeply in the shadows, in the dark about Colin's true feelings and still concealing her own feelings. But then, when the scene ends, Pen and Colin are together in the middle of the carriage, almost nose to nose in the same frame. They are finally equal in their feelings, finally together, eye to eye, bathed in a shared golden light.
And how Luke portrays this moment of vulnerability is so good because he's sort of looking down as he puts this idea into the world of having feelings for her. He's like, what if I did? Which is still not fully confessing. It's sort of, he's still taking these tentative steps.
And also judging her reaction.
Yeah. And she's not giving anything away, which is so much harder for him because then he has to say everything. He has to put everything on the line, not knowing what's going to happen once he does.
Luke Newton continued by saying there are so many themes we explore throughout that one scene. There's comedy, there's passion, there's romance, it's sexy, it's exposing, it's honest. We tackle so much all within the space of 5 minutes. And it's the vulnerability, I think. This is the first time we really see Colin stripped back and see him really vulnerable and open and honest. And then at first he doesn't quite get the reaction he's expecting, so he's thrown. And then it all kicks off from there.
Penelope is simply completely stunned into just staring at him and just saying, what?
Yeah.
And it's not a good what either. It's not like her, what?
It's biting, like I said.
Which maybe is what they were playing with, where she was like, Beans, give me your different pen. What?
Wasn't quite like that.
That's Pen dying in the carriage.
She's just completely taken aback, right? That's just like complete shock.
Yeah, and it's cold shock as well because she had such a bad night.
Yeah.
All the propriety and like, yeah, any tone that she'd put on in a normal situation is just like what?
I feel like her delivery is almost supposed to make us second guess how she's going to react to the rest of the reveal, because we don't know yet that she is going to confess her feelings or accept his feelings and believe them. So that biting sharp edge to the what almost keeps us in suspense for how the rest of the scene is going to go.
And it derails him by really not giving him anything to work with. It's not an overt agreement. It's not an overt reaction. It's definitely not, she's definitely not throwing herself at him. And what it means is that he has to keep going and he has to keep putting his heart on the line, not knowing what her ultimate reaction is going to be.
Lose something, babe. Risk something.
What else has he got to say, Lek? Take a deep breath, my love.
Oh God, I have to do the whole speech? Okay.
You have to do it, babe.
What follows is Colin's beautifully written and beautifully performed confession of love. I've spent so long trying to feel less, trying to be the kind of man society expects me to be. And for a moment, I thought I had succeeded. But these past few weeks have been full of confounding feelings. Feelings like a total inability to stop thinking about you, about that kiss. Feelings like dreaming of you when I'm asleep, and in fact preferring sleep because that is where I might find you. A feeling that is like torture, but one which I cannot, will not, do not want to give up.
Do not want to.
His delivery is so good. Yeah.
Oh,
do not want
so
to.
good. Listeners, I died, they died.
Now imagine me acting as Colin saying that.
Babe, give your version.
You will not have to imagine it for long.
Beans, give us your cannot, will not, do not want to.
Just do the last sentence, the but one which I cannot.
Oh.
But one which I cannot, will not, and do not want to give up. I don't know. I aged 60 years. years.
That's him out of breath after running.
Yeah. Wait.
Wait!
Oh, I mean, what a confession. How absolutely gorgeous. And again, just such a paragraph of confession. What I love is that it really ties into Colin's struggle as well through part one. He was trying to be someone that he wasn't, trying to fit into society and failing because he is sensitive and he is loving. And it's the arc from the pirate who was ultimately floundering because of Penelope's silence to a man who can be his true self with her. And he is truly seen by her. And it isn't just his love of Penelope that is confessing, but how it's tied into her making him be his true self and believe in his true self.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons it's so moving. It's not even just a love confession. It's him like bearing his soul to her and telling her what kind of man he wants to be. Ugh, just beautiful.
Which kind of ties into the 301 apology where he was like, I'm not the man that I was last season.
Yeah.
He's just continually proven that, and he's finally overcome that through his love for her. It's just so gorgeous.
I also love how Penelope flutters her eyelashes after Colin admits that he can't stop thinking about their kiss. And I think Nicola is conveying that Penelope also can't help but think of their kiss in that moment too. Almost kind of hearkening back to the 301 garden apology where she flutters her eyelashes, or when she's talking about him whispering into her ears in ballrooms. I feel like in this moment she can't help but visualize their kiss and her thinking about their kiss too.
Because she's been repressing what that kiss meant to her and like plowing on as if it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I feel like way back in our season 2 rewatches, we talked about how there wasn't really this sexual energy with
the way Penn looked at him.
With Polin, like Penelope didn't see Colin in a sexual manner, but I feel like here in this scene with her fluttering eyelashes proves that she is thinking about him in that way since their kiss.
And that's like when, if you watch it, you're like, oh, he's got you though. You can act like he hasn't, but babe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's that kiss, that connecting moment that broke him that she can't escape from either. And of course, the line about dreaming, I think it's my favourite line in the whole series. Feelings like dreaming of you when I'm asleep, and in fact, preferring sleep because that is where I might find you.
Yes. That's a killer.
All those references we trudged through about bloody wildest fantasies and reveries and Colin dreaming and Penelope being told that her love was a childish fantasy. I love that this is the resolution.
Chef's bloody kiss.
Yeah, the payoff is that he'd rather be asleep and lost in his fantasies forevermore just to get a chance to be with her if he can't be in reality.
What a payoff, bro. What a payoff. How many fucking years has it been?
There's been a lot of suffering on this podcast to get here.
Maybe we should title this episode, What a Payoff.
What a fucking payoff. And it's like how he wrote all those letters to be with her even when they were apart and he couldn't reach her then. And the fact that being literally unconscious is the only way. So dramatic. I love that it is again him taking action and he's not sitting by and accepting being without her. It's so different to what we saw with Marina where he wouldn't fight. He is fighting right here through words, through language, which again is something that like binds them together so beautifully. And I also love, as we said, that last line that he cannot, will not, does not want to give it up. It's such a truth about Colin's character because his love story and his role as a hero isn't like Anthony's or Simon's. Their storylines very much involve them fighting against falling in love for whatever reason they had. And here you have a character who wants to fall into their love story and who isn't fighting that and who doesn't actually want to fight that. It's such a different portrayal of a male love interest for the show. And I think it's something we were all hoping for. And it's really refreshing to have that portrayal.
And after Colin's declaration, the script states that Penn is shooketh in all caps and is basically trying to, quote, comprehend what he is saying, which I found hilarious.
Regency shooketh. And if you want me to break the illusion for you for just a second, if you're wondering how they create the effect of the carriage rocking along as Colin gazes into her eyes, confesses his love, it's actually 3 burly members of the crew rocking it from the outside, according to Nicola.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
But back to the romance, eh?
Well, maybe not so fast on the romance front. Penelope tells Colin not to say things he does not mean, but Colin replies, but I do mean it. I absolutely love Luke's soft delivery of that line. It's just perfection. But Colin goes on to say that this is everything he's been wanting to say to Penelope for weeks, which the script says leaves Ben, quote, utterly confounded.
Oh, babe.
Maybe in the world of Bridgerton, they live on a different planet where they revolve around the sun at different times than us. So, like, for them, it's been weeks, but for us, it's been 2 weeks. They're in the Chronicles of Narnia. Like, they're in Narnia.
Right. That explains the epilogue funkiness, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And that's how Debling is time traveller, yeah.
Exactly. There we go.
Yeah.
And we are laughing at him about the whole weeks thing. And we have advocated that it has actually been longer for him.
Unless he lives in Narnia, then it's true.
Mr. Tumnus. Now, there's a man.
Oh, yeah. I had a crush on him.
What are you talking about? He's a predator.
Oh,
James
Mr.
McAvoy, you
Tumnus.
joking me?
I love James McAvoy.
I'm not commenting on the actor.
Mr. Tumnus.
But I will say, I grew up watching the BBC Chronicles of Narnia.
I'm obsessed.
I was obsessed with the BBC Chronicles of Narnia. In fact, I have a very, very strange story. I'm going to pull a beans here and have a very strange story in the middle
Hell
of this
yeah.
very romantic conversation and say that whenever I lost a tooth, I happened to be watching the BBC version of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Wow.
This one.
I loved all of them.
This one, Lack.
For the listener, Veg is holding up a DVD of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, I have that. It's in my closet right there.
Oh my god. Lack, you don't understand how excited I am.
I have that. I was just about to say that my Wi-Fi name for a long time was Puddleglum, but right now it's Beantown after the 10th Kingdom.
What's your social security code and your bank details, by the way, Lex?
Please allow me 45 seconds, please. I've never found anyone else who has watched the BBC version of Chronicles of Narnia from the 80s. I'm utterly obsessed with it. I can quote scenes of it. Listeners, if you've watched it, please, I'm obsessed with Mr. Beaver. Aslan is on the move.
Oh, I love it.
Amazing, amazing.
Aw, we should watch it. I'll watch it with you. We could watch it over Zoom sometime. I haven't seen it in a while.
Listeners, if you're part of this elite club that has also watched it, drop a beaver emoji or something.
Beaver emoji.
A beaver emoji!
Maybe a log. I don't know if there's a beaver.
A Turkish delight. I'm so excited.
Yeah, a log, a stick of wood.
I have to say that the intensity in which Veg just delivered that was literally exactly the same as Colin in the carriage. He was like,
Okay.
listener,
I cannot. I do not want to.
be without the BBC Narnia. Now, that was a very long diversion. But back to Colin talking about weeks. That's how we got into this conversation.
We spent weeks, the same amount of time that Colin spent thinking about Penelope for weeks, we spent in our little divergence. There you go.
Okay, so let's take it at face value. For Colin, it really has only been a few weeks that he's been aware of his feelings, whereas for Penelope, it's been her carefully concealed secret for years and years. But I think what's perfect about this scene is that both experiences of their love feel equal. It doesn't feel like, oh, I've been suffering for longer than you have, or anything like that. Those weeks of torment have consumed every part of Colin, and it's changed everything for him.
He's been like speed running the experience of being in unrequited love for 12 years, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel like either is diminished by the other. It just feels like two people who have fallen into their love story at different paces and in different ways, colliding in this moment.
She fell first, he fell harder.
And you know what? Pen doesn't fall in the scene. Well done, Pen, for staying upright.
Yeah.
But I think Pen has learnt to live with her love. And so for him, it's bursting out of him. And she's just sat there like, I do this every day, babe. But I think it creates this beautiful and really ironic collision between the two. Have you had that contrast of him being like, I have unrequited love for you? Because Pen's always been on the verge of confessing her love and there's always pulled back. And then it's him that takes that plunge for them both. And then the other thing about this whole scene, especially in how we thought about it before the season came out, I always thought that Colin had a really big job on his hands before. I didn't mean that.
Oh.
Oh, Lord.
I thought it was going to be difficult for Colin to confess his love for Pen and for Pen to believe it was real. Because I was like, how are they going to take that journey from the 208 scene where her dreams are completely crushed to him confessing his love and her genuinely believing that he means it? Because she's faced a lot of rejection. She's misread a lot of signals in the past and her walls have been up. But I think his confession breaks down all of them and makes her believe. And I also think it's an important reminder that Pen hasn't actually thought her love for him was unrequited. It's always felt to me like she's really believed that he would wake up at some point. You know, she's the eternal optimist. And the other thing about this confession is that they are best friends at the end of the day. And she is the one person that's always been able to really see him and know him. So I think in this really vulnerable moment, she can see that he does mean it. and that he has been truthful.
But Pen is still understandably confused by his sudden confession. When Pen reminds him that they are friends, the script says Colin's face changes as he suddenly realizes that he may be alone in this feeling. He is immediately embarrassed. Because as we've seen over the last several episodes, Colin is utterly unaware of the fact that Penelope reciprocates his feelings, and so he believes that he is, as the script says, alone in this feeling.
And we've talked before about this issue of reciprocity ironically being used in the season, that that's what stopped him. It isn't how he feels for her or whether it's love or anything like that. It's, is she going to feel the same? And it's been tormenting him for such a long time, or weeks or whatever, not knowing how she feels and not being able to get inside her head.
And it reminds me of the scene in 206 when Eloise said, it's the not knowing, which makes it feel like torment. Obviously, that was a line by Elle about Theo, but the show used it to also reflect Penelope's own situation with Colin, not knowing if her feelings were requited. The use of the word torment was used in that scene and here in Colin's love confession, showing how both Pen and Colin, although they may have experienced their feelings on drastically different timelines, have both been tormented by not knowing if their love is reciprocated.
And when we looked at the dream sequence, that was the answer he was searching for when he went to find her in his dream. Mm-hmm. He wanted to know if she felt the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was everything that it was hinging on. And that's kind of what he was going to ask her at the end of 303, is how do you feel about me? It's a really beautiful moment because he opens himself up to complete rejection. And there is that moment where he thinks there's that moment of rejection, but he still has to be brave and get it out.
Yeah, like Violet said. But Colin quickly backtracks, apologizing to Penelope, saying he doesn't know what he was thinking.
This makes me so sad.
Yeah.
He just collapses in on himself. And it's that realization that we're saying that he has put everything on the line and he's just preparing his body to be rejected.
Everything tonight?
And it's like, where do you go from there?
Everything tonight.
And then, eyes glistening, he apologises, but all is not lost, Colin, not if Archer Marsh has anything to say about it.
As the script says, Pen watches him and is overcome. Realizing it's now or never, she then confesses her own truth, admitting that she'd like to be more than friends.
So much more.
Perfect.
And our listener, said, do you think Pen said so much more in the carriage as a direct reply to Debling's would you like it to be more early in the episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. She's finally answering the question.
Mm-hmm. Very astute observation. I think she is, yeah.
And she can be such an evasive character as well, I think. And this is something that whenever anyone's asked her before, she's always denied it. She denied it with Marina, she denied it with Debling. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she doesn't answer Debling, but she does answer Colin here.
Yeah.
And then it also reminds me of the little something more in the books. Remember when she was skipping?
Oh yeah.
More, something more. That's always what I hear. I know it's like completely different words, but
yeah, different context.
And then the gaze that Colin gives her from just absolute abject despair into just this transformation of just pure lust.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot in this episode about how vulnerable this moment is for Colin, but I think it's also really vulnerable for her too.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, and it'll be of great significance later in the season, that Pen doesn't actually confess her love for him here.
Mm-hmm.
What she says is she wants to be more than friends.
Right.
But it's like, I mean, anyone on Hinge who's had that fucking conversation, like, what does that mean? And I think in this moment, he doesn't really think about what she means by that definition. And he gets so carried away and swept away.
Yeah. I think he reads it as feelings. Mm-hmm. I think he's so relieved that there may be feelings reciprocated between them that he's not thinking about the depth of the feeling on each side.
Yeah, so he jumps to proposal.
Yeah.
And then it's only next episode when he stops and he's like, shit, she actually didn't write a paragraph about how deeply she loves me.
Right.
Did she just get swept away? And that's kind of what plays in 305, but we will get to that episode. Yeah. I love that he also thinks that after the mirror scene, and then it's only after the mirror scene, it's like, by the way, if you think you just got carried away by the carriage, it's like, babe, we've crossed that drawbridge. But yeah, I think knowing Pen's mind, I know Colin doesn't know her mind at this moment, but knowing how closely she's kept this secret and protected herself from it, for to open it up to it right now, I think that's equally as brave for Pen.
Yeah. But
as the tension builds and Archer Marsh slips his way into the carriage, the two reach towards one another.
And it's on.
Doo-doo.
As the script says, at that, all the repressed lust Colin's felt comes barreling out of him as he locks eyes with Pen and dives in to kiss her.
Whee!
All caps.
All caps. They hold this kiss, deep, passionate, one that contains all the unsaid things and feelings over the past days, weeks, years.
Days, weeks.
Weeks. When they part, they look at each other with wonder, knowing they have crossed into the unknown, but excited for what it holds. There's still uncertainty there. Fear, really.
And it's interesting because it isn't beat for beat in the script written out exactly what those moments of intimacy will look like. It is kind of very broad, like dives into kiss. They have these moments. The script kind of covers like the initiating action, but then it also really covers like the emotions behind the intimacy.
The emotional beats.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That then they worked with the intimacy coordinator to really curate and create.
Yeah.
But yeah, Penn and Colin absolutely going for it in Carriage as Pitbull plays out. Colin's arms are wrapped around Penn, their lips meet, Penn's hand slips up to his shoulder. This is a moment in history, people. Our lives will never be the same.
Dink, 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 dink.
Can I have the chorus, babe?
Da 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 da. Dink, 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 ding, ding. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Everybody. Ding, 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 ding.
I think I went drunk again.
Ding, ding. Everybody. Ding, 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 ding.
Throw it, Archer. Anyway.
If you haven't guessed, we should probably stop and talk about the song choice here. Give Me Everything, the stripped down version by Pitbull, in brackets, by Archer Marsh. My. Before we actually saw the scene, when we saw the track listing,
I screamed.
so before we saw the song in context, our initial reactions were quite different.
Right.
I think our opinions across the whole spectrum here,
Yeah.
because I really like it just as it is. I'm just a fan. I think it's fun. I don't know. It just works for me. I'm a simple gal. Beans, you like it, but...
No, I thought it was hilarious. I loved it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's it. You thought it was funny.
You liked it in a comedic way.
Yeah.
I like wrote like a daily update, remember?
Yeah.
On how I felt. I was like day 3 of hearing
Yeah.
that Give Me Everything is using because we wanted Take Me to Church, which is so totally different.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take me to church. Do you remember what I wanted?
You wanted Partition?
Yep. I wanted Partition.
Yep, by Beyonce.
Yeah.
And I feel like Take Me to Church wouldn't have worked
They weren't in a church.
with the tone of this scene.
No.
No, but you know what would have? Partition.
Partition. We'll probably touch on it in part 2, but the behind the scenes video of them doing the wedding dance to Take Me to Church, I almost like more than the actual wedding dance. It's so good. And the emotion of that song is just so heavy. But anyway.
Yeah, given how the tone of the scene actually is, how it's joyous and fun and youthful,
Yeah.
I think this does work. But Beans, do you have any crumbs about how they arrived at this decision? Because it is a bit of a left field choice. Everyone did kind of recognise that it was unexpected.
Ha 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 ha. Biscuit.
Obviously, it's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. The music's... Hello? Would you like to come to join us?
Biscuit coming to tea.
Biscuit, would you like to come up and join us?
Just take the overground over.
Carry on.
The music supervisor Justin Camp's told to do. I think everyone was a little bit shocked that they were so in love with this Pitbull song cover for the sequence of all things.
Facts.
But the song is amazing. It has this great build to it, and that's what the scene really needed. It needed this anticipation and then an explosion into the main chorus of the song as we see what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
And Justin continued that it's outside of the sound of the covers that we normally hear. It almost leans further into a pop sound slightly, just because the original song is such a banger pop track. Ding, ding, ding. It's an explosion of emotions for these two characters that has finally boiled over into this moment, and I feel like the song really reflects that. It's just like, this is it. Give me everything. Here we go. Let's do this. And I feel like it's going to give fans and everyone who's been waiting for this such a cathartic release.
Definitely gave Penn that. Jesus.
Give me everything tonight.
The opera cover.
The lyrics are very fitting. As we said, like, it is Penn's mentality of being like, fuck it.
Yeah.
We're here right now, so I'll make the most of it whilst I've got him in front of me like this.
Yeah.
I really do love it. I think the choreography between the music and the actual intimacy. It's crazy how perfectly it's been edited.
Yeah.
It's like a dance between the music and the screen. But if you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you will know that we actually did interview Archie Marsh about his work on season 3, including Give Me Everything. So we talk a lot more about the creation of the song, how it fits within the story over on that episode if you want to go and listen. But back to Pen and Colin.
Then Penelope does what we've all been wanting since Colin walked off that ship in 301. Penelope runs her hand through Colin's hair, and it seems like maybe he wanted it too. The script says that Pen takes a breath and dares herself to do something she's been wanting to do for a very long time, and then all in italics, she runs her fingers through Colin's hair. And that action alone, seeing Pen take what she wants like that, is enough for Colin to fully lose himself in the moment.
And that's kind of his approach as well. Like, he's so turned on by her
Wanting. Yeah.
enjoying it and taking charge.
Yeah.
He wants to be wanted. Like, that is the core of him in so many aspects, sexually, emotionally, like financially, whatever.
Except when it comes to staffing issues. Not interested.
Staffing issues aside, he wants to be needed and to do something, to be a giver, which she certainly is.
I'm the giver.
As we say, Beans, you maybe were not quite as on board with her running her hands through the hair,
No.
but we did evade disaster of her mentioning it.
It is just like your sister's hair.
But oh my God, Colin's face when she touches him, it's like he's drinking her in after weeks alone in a desert.
Parched man, finally slaking his thirst, yeah.
It's just like absolute ecstasy.
Yeah.
And I love when they keep checking in with each other, like neither of them can believe that this is real, because it is both them experiencing that. Because it's like the script says there, she's wanted to do it for a very long time. You can imagine like Pen throughout her life looking at this man and loving him and wanting to touch him and be with him. And maybe previously that would have been in a much more innocent, unknowing way. Because she's loved him for so long, her love for him has grown and changed through the ages, and how close they've become, how their relationship and friendships have changed. And now here it's a moment of discovery for her, as she's not only experiencing what it means to be with him for the first time and being able to explore him in this new way, but to also experience sexual expression for the first time and discovering what she can do, not just what she can feel as a recipient, but also what she can elicit from him. Also, how she can derive pleasure from his pleasure, like soaking in the expression on Colin's face as she does in this moment. And with Colin, what you see here isn't just sexual pleasure, but the ecstasy of reciprocity. And reciprocity is something that's tormented him for episodes now. I mean, just think about his version of Penelope in the dream he had in 303. In his mind, he had her say that she feels the same, that Colin's consumed her every thought. He's been aching for her to reciprocate to him, either verbally or physically. And now in the carriage, there's this physical proof that she does want him and that his feelings are reciprocated. So it's also this blissful epiphany for him.
So earlier she told him that their kiss meant nothing. So seeing her enjoying and wanting him and being in that moment as much as he is, I feel like it's cathartic for him. He realizes that their kiss did mean something.
Yeah, because he's been reeling from that, because he's like, that changed everything for me and meant everything. And it didn't mean anything to you. So like you say, knowing that she has that sexual, physical pleasure from him. As Archie Marsh said on our podcast, or maybe it was me, I don't know, as someone said in our podcast once, she might not have got everything, but she got enough. But yeah, it's just pure bliss. And this, of course, is the moment when Colin pounces and absolutely devours her. Kind of like what you're saying, Lecky, almost like he's waiting for that physical permission that, oh, you do want this as badly as I do.
Yeah. And while it's not a bodice ripper, we do get a bodice lowered, at least a centimeter, as Colin slips her sleeve off her shoulder. So a score in Beans' direction.
Yeah, we do indeed. And in the book, this dress gives way to, as Beans has popularised, a titty pop out moment.
For those of you who don't know, a titty pop-out dress.
I think everyone knows Beans.
You could imagine.
No, because we have had some newer listeners.
We need to hear it.
A titty pop-out dress is anybody who has a tit, singular or plural, deserves a titty pop-out dress, because it's just a dress that's like when you're in the moment, a tit pops out, and who doesn't love a tit, okay? It's some nice little nipple play, and then there you go. Titty pop-out dress.
Colin Bridgerton, 1815.
Is a truth universally acknowledged that a man in possession of good fortune must always be in want of a tit.
Has a titty pop-out dress.
Yeah, and I think, a bit of boobage wouldn't have got amiss here, but I do think that they were right to wait for the mirror scene for that particular reveal, like big old reveal, big moment for Nick, for Pen.
Yeah.
I also feel like the sleeve alone is still sexy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Scandalous.
Yes.
Because it's an homage to the book where obviously like that whole thing is a big part of I was going to say the boob scene. What's it called? The carriage scene.
Titty pop-out scene.
So it's a way to sort of like harken back to that, but in a very show Pen and Colin way where it's tentative and respectful and politely erotic. That is such a Colin thing.
It adapts those moments from the book, but in a way that it's tamer, but no less sexy.
Listen, I have had a man like do a little dip of the sleeve, the little strap, and I exploded on the inside.
Well, we'll get to that for Pen in a little bit.
So it's hot.
Beans approves.
So Colin does a little over-the-dress boob fondling.
Yay.
He leaves the under-the-dress action for Pen's diddly parts, which we'll cover later. So to raise the tone a little, this scene is just really impressive in how it conveys so much intimacy without us actually removing any of Pen or Colin's clothes. So massive kudos to the directors and the intimacy coordinators here, as well as, of course, Nick and Newts, for creating a scene that was so hot it was one of the most watched 10 minutes of Netflix history.
The script continues. He kisses her again, and this time his hands roam Pen's body. We're skipping through time here as he kisses down her neck and then fully immerses himself in her décolletage. One hand comes up to grab her breast, squeezing over her dress. Pen can barely contain her delight. And then, just as their breathing intensifies, their arousal growing, Pen moans Colin's name and the carriage comes to a stop.
Colin!
So this is the entire description from the beginning of the sort of intense intimacy to the carriage stopping.
Mm-hmm.
We have the boob moment, okay?
Titty pop out.
You might notice something is missing there. A little moment.
Yeah.
A little helping hand.
Yeah, so the script doesn't explain how handsy Colin got in this scene. So this was likely a decision that was left up to the actors, the director, and the intimacy coordinator.
Yeah.
And handsy is definitely the right word for it, as Colin's hand first slips over her chest with Pen looking down in amazement.
In delight. She can barely contain her delight.
Sorry,
Yeah.
delight. She is shocked and delighted. As Luke pointed out, this is Pen's first sexual encounter, so this is all entirely new to her. It's such a journey of discovery, and she has full trust in Colin to guide her through it. But then, of course, his hand slips down to the bottom of the dress.
And we get to see more of Pen's dress here than we did earlier in the episode as Colin reaches under. He reveals the silk and the mesh underlayers. And we actually got a peek of these, plus her shoes, in the This Morning interview, crazily.
Yeah.
Like in a completely different context. But the shoes are maximum sparkle, very girly, very sparkly. And interestingly, they have what on them? Say it with me, guys. A bow!
Because of course she's not going to miss out on the action.
Signature Penelope Featherington. Yeah.
Oh, bless. And it was a very slippy material, wasn't it? They specifically said, like, they needed the underlayer to be slippy so his little hand could trail up.
They wanted it to be slippy, to not impede the action or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But bows are the last thing on Pen's mind as Colin, after checking in with Penelope, slips his hand up her leg. Nicola talked to Variety about this exact moment when they kind of check in and she nods and how important it is to the story. She said, "We realise later she doesn't know about sex fully, but she's aware of her body and where she wants him to touch her." She also pointed out that Pen has desired Colin for a long time. She continued, "It's lovely because it's so easy to see virgins on TV portrayed in a way that they're like terrified and have no agency, but that's not the case. The consent is managed so beautifully. And that's down to the writing and the brilliant Lizzie Talbot, the intimacy coordinator, because we want it to seem like it's not teacher-student anymore. We're in this together. It's the first time they completely see each other and they're on a level and it's like, let's go." And that's important because there has been a power dynamic that's kind of seesaw between them. And it's bringing them back together regardless of who's more or less experienced.
Yeah, because also he hasn't had like a sexual encounter that has been this fulfilling and satisfying before either.
Yeah, that's meaningful. So it's a revelation for him.
Luke also talked about the importance of consent in their story, saying it's so appropriate to the relationship because they've grown up together and in a way she already feels like a part of his family and he's protective over his family. So it feels really appropriate that there is that level of consent. We see earlier in the season that Colin has had these wild experiences, brothel houses, he's had this wild time abroad, and we're very aware that Penelope has never been intimate before. So it really does feel important and it feels like there's a level of care between the two of them. To me, it makes it that much more sexy because it's intimate and passionate and they really connect in that moment. moment, it's beautifully written.
Definitely. And I think so, it's so important to see on TV as well. Those moments of not just overt consent, but it being a really sexy part of intimacy between two characters.
On top of this, I personally think that Colin checking in with Pen is important so that he knows that she's as caught up in the moment as he is, as I kind of touched on earlier.
And praise be to the music team for their timing on this one. The chorus kicks in right as he hits his target, doesn't it? As Colin's left hand gets to work, we have a lovely montage of Pen getting fingered in the back of the carriage. I'm sorry, I wish I had a more poetic way to put it, guys. I guess we should all be thankful I don't write fics on AO3. It is a beautiful scene, though, where I think what I love about this scene is that Colin is really completely there for her as she's lost in the bliss, and it creates a real safe space for her to sort of experience that whilst also being very much with her in the moment. And this is entirely for her, and you can see he's getting so much from that experience of just giving to her. And you know what? He loves his little hand trick, doesn't he? As we see many times.
His little hand trick.
Do you think that's the one thing the Contessa taught him?
Oh, Lord.
And he's like, great, I'm good to go. But yeah, I love that Pen's experience is so heavily prioritised by Colin, and he really takes care of her throughout the entire scene, which echoes back to what you said earlier when he's like, it is my business, I do care for you. And this is a moment where you can see that coming through even in intimacy. And look, he definitely inserted himself into this particular narrative.
I was just reading this line, sorry.
And sat himself.
And sat himself where? Well, I think Pen has answered that question. And just as the scene, and perhaps someone else, reaches the climax, the journey home comes to an abrupt end, literally.
As the carriage comes to a halt and the footmen knock on the door. How awkward for them.
Do you think they had like a standoff as to who was going to knock on the door? Like, I'm not fucking doing.
Yes, they flipped a coin, yeah. The script says that Penelope gasps.
Beans, can you give us a...
We can see this in Pen's panic as she says, Colin, we're at your house.
Colin, we're at your house!
Clearly, reality is hitting hard.
Not as hard as Colin's fingers just hit.
But as the script says, Colin has not even noticed, so in the moment he is.
Colin eventually does realise where they are and says the famous line, oh God, could the carriage driver not keep on driving? Beyond being a perfectly delivered line, this is a complete inversion of the way the carriage ride ended in the book. Does anyone want to reenact this little section?
Huh? What section?
So, Beans, I'm casting you as Penelope.
Yeah, do your book rolls.
Veg, you can be Colin.
Sure.
Oh, Penelope.
Who's doing the narration?
I could do the narration. I'm glad to have a reprisal.
Yeah, Lek, you do the narration. Okay, and book carriage scene 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
Oh, Penelope.
He was groaning, his lips and hands growing more frantic.
Oh, Penelope. Oh, Penelope. Oh.
He lifted his head very abruptly.
Oh, God.
What is it?
She asked, trying to lift the back of her head from the cushion.
We've stopped.
It took her a moment to recognize the import of this. If they'd stopped, that meant they'd most likely reach their destination, which was her home.
Oh, God!
She started yanking at the bodice of her gown with frantic motions.
Can't we just ask the driver to keep going?
And the Romance of Mr. Bridgerton audiobook will be available. But what about version?
Oh, Penelope.
Yes, if you can't tell from that stunning rendition, in the book, it's Colin who is suddenly aware of their surroundings, and he's the one wondering if they've been spotted. I totally love that they switched this around.
Mm-hmm.
Luke and Nicola talked about this moment to Shondaland. The interviewer, Valentina Valenti, thought that the line was so funny, natural, and spontaneous that she almost thought it was ad-libbed. Whereas book fans, we know that this comes directly from the source material.
And Luke responded to this by saying, that's what we really loved about this season, diving into the comedy side of things, the rom-com element of their relationship. And then Nicola added, and their ease with one another, how they love to laugh together.
Aww.
Because that's something that we saw on season 1, like when they're standing on the edge of the ball, joking about people.
Penelope.
What a Barb. And now it's like, oh, here they are again. This banter is just so them.
Luke also pointed out that it easily could have been the seductive, sexy line to each other, but it was so much better as, God, can't we just keep going for 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
Looking to the script for this moment, after Colin asks if the carriage driver could keep on driving, Penn smiles and Colin smiles back. Huge smiles. And then the two of them are laughing in disbelief at the utter joy of all this, how good it feels and how strange it is. Eventually, Penn starts to sit up as she comes to her senses.
And at first, Penn's panicked and she's almost bracing herself up against the carriage as she's trying to come back to reality. Whereas Colin is still lost in his bliss and he's unbothered about being seen. Again, it's a flip from the book, but I think the flip works so well because it really fits how they've been all season, with Penn being more worried about being seen and the ramifications, and Colin really not caring.
Mm-hmm.
But then Colin really pulls Penn back into that blissful bubble between the two of them. It is just utter joy, isn't it? This moment that we find them in. And it has to be one of the best Polin moments. The fact that in this moment of like brave intimacy where everything's confusing and they just had this big experience, they just laugh together.
Yeah.
Which is again what they do after the mirror scene.
Yeah.
The connection that they have to each other. But my heart always in this scene, obviously I'm like so happy for Penn because like I know what this has meant to her, but I just can't help but like look at Colin's face and how it can barely breathe with how like relieved and joyous he is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about how his day has gone, he just went from the most desperate of lows, just completely lost in despair, to just soaring so high and with just such joy, thanks to one carriage ride and a hardworking left hand. What can you say?
Right hand?
Oh my God, it is his right hand.
It's his right hand.
Apologies. It is his right hand. I take it all back. The boy is ambidextrous. Let's just put it that way. Shout out to that skill for Colin, a left-handed man who has to fence with his right
Yes.
and also
perform with his right.
To be fair to Colin, it doesn't matter which hand, really.
yeah, fence and fingering with his right hand. Save the left for other activities.
Mm-hmm. Triple threat. You need another F.
I think we've got a triple threat. Yeah, he's got his 2 hands and a
Fencing, fingering, something else.
well, I can think of another F word there, maybe.
Fencing, fingering, fucking.
We're not there yet. We'll save it for the next rewatch.
yeah, next episode.
Penn addresses him, wondering if anyone could have seen them, just as Colin does in the book, but the script says Colin just looks at her, taking in her mussed-up, sex-haired beauty, thinking a moment on what to do next, and then, making a decision, he tucks her hair behind her ear, pulling the shoulders of her dress back up, putting her in order, launching 1,000 memes along the way. In the final edit, this plays out a little differently, with the two sharing a lingering kiss and staring into one another's eyes, nose to nose. Truly beautiful. But yeah, then of course, we get those fingers adjusting her dress.
Yeah.
The fact that they end up on the exact same level, like nose to nose, totally in it
Yeah.
together.
Love it.
That extreme close-up.
Sweet.
Because they are equals.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the Lady Whistledown reveal is like standing over them. Like
There's like a puff of smoke, and the Grim Reaper forms behind Penelope and follows her until episode 6.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Back to the fingers anyway. So
Yeah.
these fingers will forever live in infamy. Andrew Arn, who, as we know, directed the carriage scene, tweeted, "I wish I could take credit for this incredible moment of physical authenticity," referring to the Colin avoiding using his fingering fingers to put the dress on. He said, "But I did not give this piece of direction. It was all Luke Newton."
You dog.
And Luke also confirmed that this moment was intentional during a joint interview with Nicola Coughlan. Nicola said, "Have you seen the thing online about the fingers?" and was stunned to learn it was a deliberate choice. I remember him doing like in that interview, he does a little wink, a little cock of the head. He's like, "Not my first time."
Yeah.
He's like, "So all up there?" I was like, "I don't think it's up there, babe. I think it's very much down there, but you know."
Yeah. And as someone with crippling contamination OCD, I loved this moment. And it really redeemed Colin to me.
I remember you really came round to him in that scene. We'll have to find our messages. And you were like, "What a man."
You were stunned, yeah.
What a concern for hygiene. Although he does then use that hand to take her out of the carriage.
Yeah.
But the difference is he's not, getting it on her dress.
Harder to wash off.
That's a very good point. He's saving Ray a job.
When it's skin to skin, it's a little bit different, But
Yeah, she could just go rinse off.
she does then hug everybody with those hands.
She then does grab his mother hand in hand with Violet. She's like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, God.
And this moment where they look at each other I love that Colin is just so certain as he's tending to her and sort of caring for her and putting it back together. And I love the way that Pen is in absolute awe. It's something that she hasn't allowed herself to be in such a long time. Like, we've talked so much about Pen in season 1 and season 2, looking at him like he hangs the moon and just like letting her love like radiate out of her face.
Yeah.
But she really held that back after 208 and as she's been looking for a husband that isn't him. But now she just completely is in awe of him.
It's the tenderness of the moment. It's just so sweet.
The trust that they have in each other, even though she doesn't know what's going to come next for her. And then Colin touches her hair and sort of readjusts her curls before she asks, "What are you doing?" with just absolute reverence in her voice.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
As I said a moment ago, the script describes this as Colin just looks at her, taking in her mussed-up, sex-haired beauty, thinking a moment on what to do next. It plays out a little bit differently in the show. He actually puts her back in order before he stops to think about what is going to happen next. But I just love this moment so much. The way he looks at her, thinks, and then nods to himself, absolutely certain of what he's going to do.
And then Sasha, again, the hero of the episode. Sorry, evidently it didn't happen to the rest of the Patreon questions.
Our Carriage expert for the episode, Sasha.
Yeah, our co-host said, when do you think Colin decided he was going to propose to Pen? When he heads to the Queen's ball? When he's chasing after the carriage? After they're intimate in the carriage? And how do you feel about the writers using the line from the book for the proposal? In the book, the line is played for comedy, but Luke's delivery makes it very romantic in the show, in my humble and very correct opinion.
It's earnest.
Yeah.
His delivery is earnest.
It is.
And that's what sells it.
I think you can see him decide. It is that moment where he looks over her and he nods to himself.
We're always talking about Luke's micro expressions, and you can literally see the thought process in his face as he's, like the script says, coming to that decision. You can see it in his eyes, and that's when I think he decides to propose.
When he's deciding that, I don't think it's in a flippant way like book Colin, where it's kind of like, you're like, did you just think of that off the top of your head? I think he just hasn't had time to imagine that he could propose to her.
It's a culmination.
He really thought he lost her for a start. And then when he went to the ball, I don't think he knew that he'd have a point where he could ask her that question.
I feel like this is something he would have hoped for, but didn't realize until this moment, until after she reciprocated his feelings.
It was a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that he knows that it is a possibility, that this is a reality that he can have, he acts.
Yeah, because the question he was going to ask her was, are you going to marry Debling? I need to know.
Yeah.
Before I can process anything and hope and dream for anything else. And in his wildest fantasies, the only question was, do you care about me?
Yeah.
And her reciprocating and waiting for him. And it's only now when he's in that epiphany of we are together and we've had this moment together that he allows himself to ask that. So I think it is in this moment, but not in a way that is only just now occurring to him that he does want to marry. I think it's just he can ask her.
The script says that Penelope is stunned as Colin opens the door and gets out of the carriage. I remember that Nicola once talked about this moment in an interview where she said, it makes me so sad for her that she thinks he's just getting out of the carriage and walking away because she's just so used to stuff going wrong. And you're like, it's not going wrong this time. It's not going wrong. But then he puts his hand out for her, asking if she's coming with him. After a flustered and rather confused Penelope points out that his family would see her, the script says, Colin just takes a deep breath and leans into the carriage asking, for God's sake, Penelope Featherington, are you going to marry me or not?
Oh, and that is what Penelope was consenting to and imagining. It's like, it's just this. Again, she can't quite dare herself to believe it. And it's like when she's saying like more than friends, she didn't say like, I want to marry you, because she couldn't dream of that being a possibility. It was like, just this moment, I'll just have you for now. It was Pen thinking like, friends with benefits, sign me up.
God, yeah.
I'll go for that if that's what you're offering me.
Oh, I don't know. I think she was just seizing this moment and like, I don't know, the possibility that this is all that ever could be.
Yeah, this might be all she ever has of Colin.
I don't think she was thinking to the future. I think she was purely living in the moment.
Yes, I agree. Give me everything. Now, tonight, in this moment.
Very book pen of her.
Right. When they got to his place, she was just genuinely like shocked because she wasn't thinking ahead of the repercussions of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that we remember that Pen is completely shell-shocked in this scene, because it's like you say, Beans, she has to only be living in the moment, because if she thinks too far ahead, then Whistledown has to come crashing down.
Right.
True.
Because what's funny about this end of the episode is we have Whistledown's voiceover, but like Whistledown doesn't come into Pen's head at all.
Yeah, until Eloise brings it up,
Yeah, until Eloise crashes the world down on her. And so Pen doesn't have any expectations because it's just a shock to her.
And the script actually leaves it ambiguous as to whether Penelope answered the proposal, saying, off pen's breath-catching.
Luke Newton talked about the proposal on the Bridgerton podcast. He said, I love that moment so much. The proposal is funny, but I think that's beautiful because that's the way they connect and it's the way they communicate with each other. And as we said, this is taken directly from the book, like word for word, it's how book Colin proposes, but it's so different. It's coming from joy as opposed to that impulsivity and flippancy that we see in the book, just relief. And he wants to take us straight into his house. But what's important, as you say, Lecky, is that the episode ends with pen's breath catching. And actually in the final edit, we do end on her face.
Yeah.
And it's completely ambiguous. We don't know what she says. We'll discuss this more in part 2. But actually there is no resolution to whether or not she did overtly say yes or not. Before the show came out, we all thought she was going to say no, which again, we'll talk about later. But how do you feel about the book ending being kept in the show? Because the two carriage scenes, despite their differences, they end on the exact same note, but they're played in a very different way.
It was definitely surprising. I think we'd heard that it was going to be a cliffhanger ending. And this wasn't really a cliffhanger because, like, I think everyone assumes, like, by this point, we sort of knew that she probably would say yes, right?
By, like, the tone of the scene.
Yeah. So it wasn't a cliffhanger at all. So I wasn't expecting it even up to how it came.
That's what she said.
I think, as soon as the season started, it was clear that they wouldn't go in that direction. With her saying, absolutely fucking not, mate, as you put it off. So that's not your accent, but there you go.
Absolutely fucking not. But there we go, guys. The end of 304. Our listener Nick said the carriage scene was superb, better than expected. Hope for, actually. What did you like in particular about the carriage scene? I feel like we've discussed what we've liked. But Nick said, I was impressed by how many notes it hit. Colin's amazing love declaration, Pen's bravery when she revealed she wanted to be more than friends.
So much more.
Their chemistry and the steaminess. Also, I adore the switch up with Colin saying the line about wanting the driver to keep on driving. Completely agree with all of the above. And Tara says, do you feel like the carriage scene was perfect, or is there anything else you would want to change about it? For Tara, it's the most perfect scene in all of television.
Oh,
I'm there.
I agree with all of their comments.
yeah, I think so too.
It is perfect. And I love that it's perfect. And we'll talk about 308 when we get to 308. But for me, this feels like a finale, which is so weird that it happens in the middle of their season. But it does feel like that.
Then they lived happily ever after. The end.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Whistledown was never heard from again.
Close laptop.
I feel like the only thing that Nick didn't list that is a highlight for me is just his soft delivery of, but I do mean it.
Yeah.
I just love that.
But there we go. That is the mammoth task of 304 Old Friends. Lecky, take us through your whistle ups, your whistle downs.
The whistle up, of course, is the carriage scene
I should fucking hope so.
in its entirety, all of it. And the whistle down is the brothel scene. Just not a fan.
And then, guys, what is our bow rating? So this isn't just for carriage, this is the whole of our 3-part saga.
And just so people remember, the bow rating is the least amount of bows, the better.
Right.
The more bows, the more atrocious.
The more the suffering.
Thank you, Beans.
0 to 12. Yeah, so this is a 0 out of 12 for me. Perfection.
It's actual perfection, babe.
Wow.
It's pretty good. I mean, like, would I have changed different things about the way their story was told? Yes. But the execution of this entire episode where you're reminded how much that Penelope loves love and Colin comes to the realization about what type of man he wants to be. And it's just so beautiful and so moving and poignant. And we were just so looking forward to the carriage scene, and the delivery was 10 out of 10 perfect.
Yeah.
So yes, this is a 0 out of 12 for me.
Aw.
Vegetable?
Lecky has kind of moved my opinion, and I feel like I'm closer to a 1 or a 0 now. But I'll say what I was going to say, which was I was going to give it 2 because, of course, the point for the brothel, and secondly, the just lack of interaction that they sort of had until the end of the episode.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, this is exactly where I'm going to come in. I feel like a 0.5 or a 1, like this is my favourite episode, hands down. The only thing that would make it more perfect is if they have a scene early in the episode, because it's a long run for them not to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been really beautiful and really tragic.
But I also love how much they convey in the scenes where they're alone, like Penelope watching the dancers and her realization that she can't live without love.
Yeah.
It's completely divorced from Colin. Colin's not even there. She's watching these dancers play out this love ballet and realizing that's the life that she wants for herself. It's like, it's just so beautiful.
And that leads them back to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Beans, what are you going to give it?
I really have a real rating. I was just going to say 2 bows for the 2 bows on her feet.
Cute.
I think Colin's story in particular is portrayed really beautifully. It's a huge journey to carry the audience and make us feel his despair to the resolution, the moment of action. It's huge ground to cover. It kind of reminds me of how 302 is a huge journey for Penelope to like carry her, but almost the reverse. So you take her from hopeful optimism to absolute despair. And that's a huge ground to cover for her. And then here it's the opposite for Colin. And I think it does it really well. Also, just want to give a quick shout out for the scoring of the episode. I think the whole of season 3 has a beautiful soundtrack, but the scoring and the soundscaping in this episode is brilliantly done. It feels like a little world within itself.
And like you said, it does feel like, you know, the epilogue, like the end of their season.
An ending, yeah. And there we go, season 3, part 1, all done and dusted. Very quick fire ideas, but overall thoughts, I think we all love part 1, as we've said. It's not perfect, I don't think.
It's not perfect at all. There's definitely things I would have changed in part 1, but overall, I really, really, really love the journey of part 1.
Yeah, and I think it does that really successfully. Quick re-ranking, Lecky, because we had a ranking episode. Do you still feel the same way with your episodes?
1 will always be my favorite. I would maybe knock episode 4 up. I feel like we've ranked all of the episodes in their entirety.
So it's harder.
It might have done 1-3. I think I would do 1-4 and then potentially 3-2 or 2-3. I feel like I really love the silliness of the balloon sequence, but I do have more of an appreciation, especially after a rewatch, of Oblivious Colin in episode 2.
Yeah. I don't know, I think I've gone the other way. I think...
Did I sway you?
I feel like 3 is maybe my second favourite in part 1.
It is very silly, campy.
But then I really don't know how 2 and 1 fall because they're so different. But yeah, I think the balloon, I think I've gone on a redemption journey with the balloon. And that's probably where my opinion has most changed during the rewatch, getting back onto really loving episode 3 and like loving the world that creates. Anyone else had any major revelations?
No.
It was very lovely to revisit it all with you guys.
Yeah.
Aw.
It's still funny to like go back and think about the predictions that were correct and then the predictions that were wildly inaccurate.
Yeah.
I don't think I did too bad in terms of predicting stuff for what was going on. But man, that balloon really took me for a ride, didn't it?
For a loop, yeah.
And then next we'll be moving into part 2. How exciting.
The dark days.
Should we make them wait a month like they did for us?
Yeah.
We'll see you guys in May.
Join us for the London premiere of What a Barb. We'll be around at some point with part 2, which is drastically different, but it starts off on such a good episode. Like episode 5 is a masterpiece. So we look forward to that. And the thing is, part 1 tonally is so different to part 2, so it does feel like a different world. And I have never been able to, now that they've been divided, because they weren't created like that, but since they've been divided, I can never see them as a cohesive season now. I can only ever feel them in parts. But yeah, favourite moments? Standouts?
First kiss, brothel.
First kiss and the brothel? That's lovely.
Favourite, least favourite.
That's her least favorite.
You can guess which is which.
My favorite moment is still the garden apology. I love it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that feels like so long ago though, doesn't it?
Ages ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Beans, do you have a soft spot for any moments?
I have a few. The first kiss is my favorite.
Aw.
The dream sequence is always so good.
The dream. What a payoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love yearning. So Colin's face.
urinate.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say urinating.
Yeah. I mean, I do love to pee sometimes.
It's a privilege to pee.
Yearning. I do love yearning. So his entire face in episode 3, just the whole time.
Nice.
yeah.
His
Yeah.
entire face. I love it.
You, Obs.
The dream obviously is like
Yes.
that is great. I also just want to give a shout out to the other like character. Like I love Violet and Colin's moments. I love those.
Loves the Featherington sisters. They're so good.
Yeah. They had great moments. Obviously, like Finch and Dankworth. Eloise had some great moments with Cressida. I think that was quite well fleshed out. So great time was had. So we will next see you for The Mirror, hopefully. Who knows how far we'll get into that episode. But in the meantime, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at What a Barb Pod on Instagram and TikTok.
If you're listening to us on your favourite podcast platform or on other podcast platforms and on YouTube with lovely collages. And if you're on YouTube, you can listen to us on the go on podcast platforms.
And if you'd like to support the pod, you can find us over on patreon.com/whataboutpod. We've got exclusive content, episode discussions, and maybe even a bean or two dropping by.
Yep, coming soon to some ears. I'm baking again.
Ears and eyes near you.
And until then, Beans, can you do us the honour and sing us out? I don't know what you're going to go for. Are you going to go for Give Me Everything, or are you going to mix it up?
Let's see.
Strings version.
Bing 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 bong 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 bing bing bong 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 bing bing bong bong bong.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Das violin. Do 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 do.
A Polin podcast.